Chapter 549. That batch of resources was split among many Grand Heaven Alliance sects, but because of Lu Ye's contribution, the Jade Blood sect took the majority. It was also because of that batch of resources that Shui Yuan was able to step into the Divine Sea realm. But at that time, the sect had to continue to develop, so Shui Yuan did not dare to use too many resources. However, as Lu Yi maneuvered in the core circle and extorted 20 to 30 million worth of resources from the various sects in the core circle, Shui Yuan did not have too many restrictions on using resources for cultivation. It was foreseeable that with another batch of resources, Shui Yuan's cultivation would get higher and higher. After all, in the entire Jade Blood sect, only she and the sect master were in the Divine Sea realm. The sect master did not need to cultivate anymore. If Shui Yuan was willing, she could pour the entire sect's resources on herself. This was an advantage that no Divine Sea realm cultivator could have. Lu Yi was only in the Cloud River realm now, so he did not need to think too deeply about the future. It would not be too late to think about it after he reached the True Lake realm. Inside the Tianji treasury, Lu Yi was picking and choosing from his storage space, selling some things that he and the sect could not use for the time being. His contribution points were increasing at an extremely impressive rate. He only stopped when he reached the 300,000 mark. Close to 300,000 merit points was enough for him to use. Even if he encountered any danger in the future, he could invite the Tianji pillar to escape. But then again, inviting the Tianji pillar did not guarantee that he would be able to escape from danger. In the hunting ground, he was protected by the Golden Body token, so the Thousand Demons Ridge cultivators could not do anything to him. Without the Golden Body token, even if he invited the Tianji pillar, he might not be able to get close. Therefore, he could only use this method to save his life if he had enough space and time to move. Then, Lu Yi started to buy the earth core fire and devoured it one by one. The fuel for the talent tree needed to be replenished quickly. In the past, he only knew that the talent tree could burn poison. Now, he knew that the talent tree could even burn the soul, extinguishing lightning. In the future, he might be able to burn something else. As time passed, the earth core fire was devoured one by one. What surprised Lu Yi was that the leaf on the talent tree did not react at all. Only after devouring close to 200 earth core fire did a leaf on the talent tree start to show signs of burning. Lu Yi guessed that his encounter this time had caused the talent tree to feel a sense of crisis. Therefore, the earth core fire that it had swallowed before had been stored as fuel. Only when it felt that its reserves were sufficient did it begin to change the leaf. It had been a long time since he had obtained a new spirit rune from the talent tree. Lu Yi was naturally curious about what kind of spirit runes he would obtain next. Therefore, he continued to purchase earth core fire to devour. Lu Yi bought another 100 or so, and when he wanted to buy more, he was surprised to find that the earth core fire was gone. This caused him to be stunned. It turned out that there was a limit to the amount of earth core fire in the Tianji treasury. He had always thought that there was an inexhaustible supply of these items in the Tianji treasury. Thinking about it carefully, Xiao Chen realized that he had taken things for granted. The items in the Tianji treasury did not appear out of thin air. All the treasures had a specific origin. The most popular rumor was that the items in the Tianji treasury were closely related to the Tianji Business Alliance. This was because someone had once sold an item to the Tianji Business Alliance. In the end, they discovered traces of the existence of that item in the Tianji treasury. Thinking about it this way, the earth core fire should have been collected by cultivators from some place and then sold to the Tianji treasury. Lu Yi was not clear on how this item was collected. The people who used it were either refining pills or refining tools. Therefore, the amount of earth core fire purchased would not be too much. Therefore, there had always been a large amount in the Tianji treasury. But when it came to him, he would purchase tens to hundreds of earth core fire every time. This time, it was even more ridiculous. He had bought hundreds of earth core fire in one go. Without the earth core fire, there should be other types of fire. Lu Ye's mind stirred. He used the Tianji treasury to search for what he wanted. A moment later, many items related to fire appeared in his field of vision. However, these items were all different. Most of them were pill fire. Pill fire was not a flame used to refine pills. Instead, it was the beast core of a fire-attributed demonic beast. Each beast core was like a burning flame. The price was also not the same. The lowest was 500 to 600 merit points, while the highest was thousands to tens of thousands of merit points. Lu Yi also saw something called the extreme frost ice flame. This should be a strange flame. Just by looking at it, it gave people an extremely cold feeling. The flame was also a deep blue color. This thing was ridiculously expensive. It was worth 180,000 merit points. He could not help but think of the phoenix true fire he had obtained in the land of fire. If this thing was placed in the Tianji treasury, it would probably be worth a lot. It might even be worth more than the extreme frost ice flame. This was because Lu Yi had obtained these things for his talent tree to devour. However, other people could use these strange flames to cultivate some special secret technique. Naturally, their value could not be mentioned in the same breath. After devouring the phoenix true fire, there was an additional fire phoenix spirit mark on his talent tree. Lu Yi wanted to know what changes would happen to his talent tree if he devoured the extreme frost ice flame. However, the price of 180,000 merit points dispelled the thought in his mind. Even if he had the capital to take out this amount of merit points, he still decided against it after some consideration. After all, he could not devour the extreme frost ice flame and obtain a similar spirit mark. There was no such spirit mark in the world. If he did not obtain the corresponding spirit mark, it would not be worth it to devour it. Lu Yi bought all the flames below 1,000 merit points. Only then did he stop. Out of nearly 300,000 merit points, he had spent 100,000 of them in one go. Money came and went quickly. This was only the Cloud River stage. When he reached the True Lake stage and the Spirit Sea stage, he would need to spend the most merit points. On the path of cultivation, talent was important. However, without sufficient financial support, it would be difficult to increase one's cultivation rapidly. The talent tree was still devouring the flames. However, Lu Yi was prepared to leave some for future use in case the talent tree ran out of fuel. As he immersed his mind, the leaves on the talent tree started to burn as the flames were devoured one by one. Lu Yi could not help but look forward to it. Compared to the spirit marks he had learned from books, the spirit marks on the talent tree were the ones he could use as he wished. They could often increase his strength in disguise. He continued to search in the Tianji treasury. He wanted to find a spirit tool that could store spirit power. He had used the Fire Phoenix spirit mark twice. The two experiences were still fresh in his mind. It had to be said that sometimes this spiritual pattern could play a decisive role. However, if one wanted to use this spiritual pattern, one would have to pay a huge price. Putting aside the aftereffects, as long as the situation was safe, he could slowly recuperate. However, the amount of spirit power needed to support the activation of this spirit mark was frighteningly large. This problem had to be solved. Previously, he had used the spirit storage spirit mark to complete the construction of this spirit mark. However, if he had a spirit tool that could store spirit power, it would not be so troublesome. He could store spirit power in the spirit tool in advance and use it when he needed it. There were all kinds of treasures in the Tianji treasury. There should be a lot of spirit tools that could store spirit power. As expected, after a while, hundreds of spirit tools that could store spirit power appeared in Lu Ye's vision. They were all different in quality and price. Even their shapes were strange. Lu Yi picked and finally chose a ring. This item was convenient to wear and difficult to lose. Moreover, its quality was not bad. It was a supreme-grade spirit tool. In the category of spirit tools, the quality mainly depended on how many restrictions were built when the spirit tool was forged. Under 9 restrictions, it was a low-grade spirit tool. From 9 to 18 restrictions, it was a medium-grade spirit tool. From 18 to 27, it was a high-grade spirit tool. From 27 to 36, it was a supreme-grade spirit tool. Different quality naturally led to different prices. Generally speaking, supreme-grade spirit tools could be bought from the Tianji treasury for 1,500 to 2,000 merit points. The difference was not too big. From Lu Ye's point of view, a mere 1 to 2,000 merit points was naturally nothing. He could obtain it easily. However, for most Cloud River tier cultivators, 1 to 2,000 merit points was already a lot, especially when every cultivator had more than one spirit tool. As one's cultivation level continued to increase, spirit tools would also need to be replaced. Therefore, cultivators spent a lot of merit points on spirit tools. Of course, one could also use spirit stones to buy spirit tools from the Tianji Business Alliance. However, the prerequisite was that one had to have enough spirit stones. Moreover, if one really wanted to use spirit stones to buy spirit tools, it would be more expensive. The spirit storage ring that Lu Yi chose was a little too expensive. It cost a full 4,000 merit points. Firstly, spirit storage spirit tools were a special kind of spirit tool. They were not weapons that cultivators used to kill others. This kind of spirit tool was more expensive than ordinary spirit tools because there were not many of them. Secondly, this was the smallest spirit storage spirit tool. It was the most convenient to carry around, so it was naturally more expensive. Lu Yi wore the spirit storage ring on his finger. It was very suitable, and it would not affect him when he wielded his saber. Moreover, it had the ability to absorb and store the spirit power that drifted around the surface of a cultivator's body. Therefore, even if Lu Yi did not actively inject spirit power into it, as long as he wore it for a long time, it would be able to store enough spirit power. When Lu Yi needed to use it, he could directly extract spirit power from it. It was much more efficient than using spirit pills to recover his body. He had bought everything that he needed to buy and sold everything that he needed to sell. Lu Yi checked the battlefield imprint on his body. On the column of merit points, there were 193,643 merit points. Now it was time for the main event. The reward from the hunting list of the hunting ground. After returning from the hunting ground, Lu Yi had not bothered to deal with this matter. Instead, he had charged into the spirit stream battlefield as soon as he had recovered. Now, he finally had the time. When the hunting ground had closed, the Tianji Business Alliance had bestowed a golden imprint on the back of Lu Ye's hand. With this imprint, Lu Yi could use any of the Tianji pillars to connect to the Tianji treasure trove and obtain his reward from the Tianji treasure trove. Chapter 550. The reward for first place on the hunting list was what Lu Yi was looking forward to the most. After all, it was a reward that could directly increase his cultivation. For the current him, nothing was more important than this. In the Tianji treasure house, Lu Yi immersed himself in connecting with the golden mark on the back of his hand. In the next moment, his vision blurred and he appeared in a secret room. The secret room wasn't big and there was only a table in the middle. There was nothing else on the table except for 2 boxes, one big and one small. They looked extremely simple. Each box had a golden mark on it, similar to the one on the back of Lu Ye's hand. This mark looked like a golden octagonal plate and there was nothing special about it. Walking forward, he raised his hand and opened the bigger box. In an instant, the secret room was filled with a dazzling golden light. When the golden light disappeared, Lu Yi looked down at the box and saw golden spirit sticks imprinted in his vision. He took them out one by one, no more, no less, just 9. Including the 2 golden spirit sticks he already had, he now had a total of 11 golden spirit sticks. He also had some spirit sticks of other grades. It was unimaginable that a 3rd-order Cloud River Realm cultivator could have so many spirit sticks. Since ancient times, no cultivator in the 9 states had obtained so many spirit sticks at once with such a low cultivation. If it weren't for the reward of the hunting list, Lu Yi wouldn't have been able to do this. The main thing was that the last Fire Phoenix Spirit Rune had killed many myriad Demon Ridge cultivators, allowing him to reach the top of the hunting list in one fell swoop. With so many spirit sticks in hand, Lu Yi estimated that if he used them all, it wouldn't be difficult for him to reach the 5th Order Cloud River realm. Of course, these 9 golden spirit sticks weren't all his. He still needed to share them with Li Baxian and Feng Yuchan, so he could only get 3 of them. Putting away the spirit sticks, Lu Yi looked at the other, smaller box. The big box contained golden spirit sticks, and the small box should contain the legendary Grade A Spring Spirit. Although Lu Yi had owned a Grade C Spirit Land, he had never seen what a Spring Spirit looked like. He raised his hand and opened the small box, but nothing appeared. Looking down, he frowned. Lying in the box was a white and plump cocoon-like thing. It was about the size of a palm, and it seemed to be alive. Lu Yi could feel that it was breathing, and as it breathed, its body was sometimes corporeal and sometimes illusory. This was a Grade A Spring Spirit? It was a little different from what he had imagined, however. Since this was a gift from the heavens, it shouldn't be a problem. It was said that as long as one had this item, no matter where one was in the Cloudy River battlefield, one could use it to create a Grade A Spirit Spring, and then create a Grade A Spirit Land. However, this was only limited to the Cloudy River battlefield. The Spirit Springs were unique to the Cloudy River battlefield. There were no other places like this, so the Spirit Springs could only be used in the Cloudy River battlefield. Lu Yi raised his hand and picked up the white and plump Spring Spirit. It felt surprisingly good to the touch. But how was this thing supposed to be kept? It seemed to be alive, so he didn't know if it would be a problem to keep it in his storage bag. After thinking for a while, Lu Yi looked at the small box in front of him. He put the Spring Spirit back and reached out to grab the box. This box was also a gift from the heavens. Although he didn't know what it was made of, it was definitely something good. He could take it with him. He might be able to use it to store something in the future. The result surprised him. No matter how much strength he used, the box didn't move at all. He tried the big box beside it, and it was the same. He couldn't take this box. The heavens were too stingy. Lu Yi helplessly gave up. He took out the Spirit Beast bag and kept the Spring Spirit inside. The storage bag couldn't store living things, but the Spirit Beast bag could. After collecting the rewards from the hunting list, Lu Ye's mind moved slightly, and he left the Heaven's secret treasure house. When he came back to his senses, he stood in front of the Heaven's secret pillar. There were many disciples gathered around him, and when they saw him open his eyes, they all bowed. Lu Yi responded and said a few words of encouragement to everyone. Only then did he use the Heaven's secret pillar to return to the Jade Blood sect. Hupa sensed Lu Ye's return and immediately rushed in from outside, nudging him with his head. "Where's Yi?" Lu Yi asked. Hupa raised his head and gestured in a certain direction. Lu Yi knew that Yi was cultivating with the sect master. Yi was a Dharma cultivator, and so was the sect master. Naturally, they were easy to teach. Compared to Lu Yi, Yi could be considered the sect master's last disciple. Lu Yi didn't disturb them. He went straight to Shui Yuan's residence. When he found Shui Yuan, he took out all the resources he had collected from outside. Shui Yuan was so shocked that she couldn't speak. So much again? The scene in front of her was familiar. A few months ago, Lu Yi had brought back such a large amount of resources. She didn't expect that in just a few months, he would bring it back again. When Lu Yi entered the Spirit Stream battlefield, he said that he was going to take revenge. But looking at the situation now, it wasn't revenge at all. He was going to restock. They had been defeated by the same person twice. She wondered how the Myriad Devil Ridge was feeling right now. "Senior sister, the days ahead will get better and better. You don't have to be thrifty in your cultivation. Right now, you and the sect master are the only 2 spiritual sea realm cultivators in the sect. The sect master is old, and there are some things he can't do. In the future, the sect will have to trouble you. Shui Yuan nodded. I understand. You, on the other hand, have worked hard. Although Lin Ming didn't know what Lu Yi had done to cause the myriad demon ridge to compromise once more, if there were no surprises, there would definitely be some fighting and killing. Otherwise, how could such a large faction compromise unless they were forced to the point of no return? Senior sister, take your time. I'll take my leave first. With that, Lu Yi took out his spirit artifact and flew to the sky, heading straight for the green bamboo peak. Looking at the mountain of resources in front of her, Shui Yuan smiled and shook her head. It was another busy and fulfilling day. Her sect's treasury was almost full in the bedroom of the green bamboo peak. Lu Yi divided the spirit stick in his hand into two. One had 6 golden spirit sticks, which were for Li Baxian and Feng Yuechan. There was also a set of 5 golden spiritual sticks, 1 purple, 1 blue, 2 green, and 4 white. Apart from the golden spiritual sticks, most of the others were spoils of war obtained from killing enemies in the hunting grounds. There were also some that were obtained from opening the lot box. He wasn't in a hurry to use these spirit sticks to cultivate because Yi wasn't here. When Yi was free later, they could cultivate together to improve their strength together. He continued to take out all kinds of flames for the talent tree to devour. As time passed, the leaves on the talent tree burned one by one. Lu Yi didn't stop until there were only 30 earth core fire left. He left a little earth core fire in case he needed it in the future, in case the talent tree ran out of fuel. He began to check the spirit inscriptions on the talent tree's leaves. Just like before, most of the leaves didn't bear complete spirit inscriptions, but some special embedding methods. These things were very useful to Lu Yi. It could be said that they were the foundation of Lu Ye's improvement in the Tao of spirit inscriptions. Otherwise, it wouldn't be enough if he only mastered the construction of spirit inscriptions and didn't know how to embed them. Spirit inscriptions could be used alone or with the help of a formation. If he used a formation, he would need to use this embedding method. Strictly speaking, spirit inscriptions and formations were complementary to each other. It took about 2 to 4 hours for Lu Yi to finish checking all the burning leaves. There were a total of 4 new spirit inscriptions. Moreover, each spirit inscription was more complicated than the previous ones because there was more than one leaf that bore them. For example, the defense and sharpness spirit inscriptions that Lu Yi first obtained were the most basic spirit inscriptions. The construction wasn't complicated and only one leaf was needed to bear all the information. However, some complicated spirit inscriptions couldn't. For example, the void spirit inscriptions were carried by dozens of leaves. The fire phoenix spirit inscriptions were even more exaggerated. If the outlines of the leaves that bore it were linked together, it would look like a fire phoenix squatting on the talent tree. The more complicated a spirit inscription was, the more leaves it needed to bear. Out of the 3 types of spirit tattoos he had obtained this time, some carried at least 3 to 8 leaves, while some carried at least 3 to 4 leaves. This meant that constructing them was much more difficult than constructing basic spirit inscriptions like defense and sharpness, trapped beast, fog, haze, sky restriction. These were the 4 new spirit inscriptions. Lu Yi had seen every type of spiritual inscription in books. Among them, he had even set up the beast trapping spiritual inscription in the hunting ground. This spiritual inscription was also a practical type of spiritual inscription that he had learned from books in addition to the void spirit inscription. The confinement array he had arranged before used the beast trapping spirit inscriptions as its core. In the hunting ground, he had been able to stall the pursuit of a 9th-order Cloud River Realm Master twice and escape with his life. The huge role of this spirit inscription was self-evident. However, learning it from books and activating it from the talent tree were 2 different things for Lu Yi. The self-taught spirit inscriptions had a risk of failure and were not very efficient, but the spirit inscriptions from the talent tree could be used at will. Using these spirit inscriptions to arrange a confinement array would be much more efficient. As the name implied, the fog spirit inscriptions could create a dense fog. The more energy it consumed, the denser the fog would become. These spirit inscriptions were specially used to arrange arrays. With the fog spirit inscriptions as its core, a bewildering array could be arranged. As long as the arrangement was delicate enough and supplemented by some other means, it could completely confuse the enemy. The mirage spirit inscriptions and the fog spirit inscriptions had the same effect, but what they created was not fog, but some illusions, achieving the effect of making the illusion real. Similarly, these spirit inscriptions could also be used as the core of a spirit array to arrange an illusion array. If the fog and the mirage spirit inscriptions were combined, it would be a proper illusion array. As for the sky restriction, as the name implied, it had the power to prohibit flying in the air. If it was arranged with this as its core, it would be a sky restriction array. The 4 spirit inscriptions did not improve Lu Ye's strength much, but it gave him more options in array Dao. Lu Ye could not help but have a strange feeling in his heart. Last time, he got 4 spirit inscriptions from the talent tree, and as a result, he went further and further on the road of array cultivation. This time, he got 4 spirit inscriptions, and went further and further on the road of array cultivation. He did not know what spirit inscriptions he would get next time. Chapter 551. Leaving the Cuizhu Peak, he went straight to the Mingxin Peak. On this trip back, he had yet to pay his respects to Madame Yun. Furthermore, it was time for him to get a new batch of books. The books that he had taken from Madame Yun the last time, he had read them over and over again. He had already memorized them thoroughly. The Mingxin Peak was always so peaceful. Although some disciples of the Jade Blood sect could freely enter and leave the sect and station, no one dared to set foot on the Mingxin Peak at will. Only Lu Ye could come here at any time without notice. When he arrived at the Mingxin Peak, he met Madame Yun under the guidance of the mute maid. Lu Ye saluted respectfully. Lu Ye respected Madame Yun very much. Although he embarked on the path of spiritual tattooist because of the talent tree, strictly speaking, Madame Yun was his real guide on this path. Although they were not master and disciple in name, they were master and disciple in reality. Madame Yun was undoubtedly very satisfied with Lu Ye's comprehension and talent. She even had the idea of accepting Lu Ye as her disciple, but she had to give up for some reason. Even so, Madame Yun didn't hide anything from Lu Ye. She really regarded him as her disciple and taught him everything she knew. In the hall, Madame Yun tested Lu Ye's recent cultivation of spiritual tattoos as usual. Lu Ye answered her questions one by one and demonstrated them. Although he didn't get any praise from Madame Yun, from the look in her eyes, he knew that she was very satisfied with Lu Ye's growth in spiritual tattoos. Then, Madame Yun constructed some complicated spiritual tattoos for him to crack, and Lu Ye completed all of them without any mistake. Search. This game, in which Madame Yun constructed spiritual tattoos and Lu Ye cracked them, was a means to quickly improve a spiritual tattooist's construction of spiritual tattoos. In Madame Yun's words, spiritual tattooists who knew how to construct spiritual tattoos were just copying. Only when they understood how to crack a spiritual tattoo quickly could they really master it. After the test, Madame Yun said with a smile, "Now you can be regarded as a real spiritual tattooist. However, modesty brings benefits and complacency brings harm. Remember not to be arrogant and complacent." "Yes," Lu Ye answered respectfully. After thinking for a while, he said, "I want to learn the way of tattooing from Madame Yun." Madame Yun was a little surprised. "Why do you suddenly want to learn this? You have some attainments in Array Dao, why don't you continue to study Array Dao?" Lu Ye said, "Disciple naturally won't give up on the matter of formation Dao. But apart from this, disciple also wishes to delve into the Dao of inscriptions. Although the sect is still developing, it hasn't been very long, and the disciple's foundations are weak. In the future, when we leave the Spirit Stream battlefield and enter the Cloud River battlefield, There will definitely be some friction. If I can learn the Tao of inscription, I can help them inscribe some spirit marks, and provide them with some assistance. Madame Yun could not help but laugh when she heard this. These should be things that old fart should consider. You only need to focus on your cultivation. The old fart she was talking about was naturally the sect leader. Lu Yi said, "Disciple also wants to do his part. Besides, there's no harm in having more skills. Understanding more things might not be beneficial, but there's no harm in doing so." Madame Yun nodded slightly. "Since you want to learn, then learn. Inscription Master is a branch of spiritual tattooist. You have tattoos on your body, so you should know what tattoos are." Lu Yi nodded. However, being able to construct a spiritual tattoo doesn't mean that you can inscribe this spiritual tattoo on someone else's body. This requires a very exquisite technique and control of one's spiritual power. In addition, it also requires some special materials to assist. These materials are not limited to different beast blood, medicinal herbs, and so on. The materials required for each type of inscription are often different. Since she had promised to teach Lu Yi the Tao of inscription, Madame Yun directly began to explain various common knowledge of inscription to him. Although Lu Yi already understood some things, he still listened attentively. To anyone, being able to listen to the teachings of a top-notch spiritual tattoo expert like Madame Yun was a rare opportunity. And through Madame Yun's explanation, Lu Yi slowly gained a systematic understanding of the Tao of inscription. Only then did he realize that the Tao of inscription was not as simple as he had imagined. However, to Lu Yi, if he wanted to cultivate the Tao of inscription, he had some unique advantages. The control of spiritual power and the strength of his mind were all his advantages. Cultivators of the same level should not be able to surpass him in these aspects. Time slowly passed. Madame Yun taught seriously for a few hours before stopping and calling Lu Yi, "Follow me." Lu Yi stood up and followed her. Not long after, the two of them arrived at the library. Madame Yun swept her gaze over the library. With a wave of her hand, books of varying thickness flew out from the bookshelves around them. There were about a dozen books. She placed these books in front of Lu Yi. These books were written by different inscription masters. They contain their own basic understanding of the Tao of inscription. Take a look. I will teach you tomorrow. Yes. Reading books was not a torture for Lu Yi. Ever since he started cultivating the Tao of spirit tattoo with Madame Yun, he had read at least a few hundred books on the Tao of spirit tattoo. In the Spirit Stream battlefield and the Cloud River battlefield, when he was free, he liked to hold a book and study it. This had almost become a habit of his. Lu Yi casually flipped open a book and read it seriously. Madame Yun had already left. After an entire night, Lu Yi finished reading the books. After all, these books were not too profound, so it was not difficult to read them. He also gained a lot in his heart. The next day, Madame Yun came directly to the library and continued to teach Lu Yi more knowledge of the Tao of inscription. This went back and forth. During the day, Madame Yun would teach by word and example. At night, Lu Yi would read books in the hidden study. Her days passed peacefully. Until 10 days later, after testing Lu Ye's theoretical knowledge of the Tao of inscription, Madame Yun nodded in satisfaction. You have more or less understood the foundation of the Tao of inscription. The rest is to get the hang of it. The Tao of inscription is very important in practice, and there is a lot of risk. This is different from other branches of spirit tattoo masters. In any case, inscription could only be effective when it was done on a living person. If an inscription master was not skilled enough and his skills were not exquisite enough, it would be a small matter if the inscription master failed to inscribe. It might even cause some irreparable damage to the target. If that was the case, then things would be troublesome. Before you practice, you need to have a set of tools that belong to you. As Madame Yun said this, she stretched out her hand and a jade box appeared in her palm. She pushed it in front of Lu Yi. This is a set of needles that I used in my early years. I have not used it for many years. Today I will give it to you." Lu Yi received it respectfully. "Thank you, madam." This was a great help to him. If Madame Yun did not give it to him, he would have to find a way to find a set of needles. Perhaps the Tianji treasury would sell it, but it would definitely cost a lot of merit points. Moreover, the quality would definitely not be as good as the set that Madame Yun gave him. When he opened the jade box, he saw 49 needles of different lengths neatly arranged in the box. He casually picked one up and found that the needle was hollow. This was mainly to make it convenient to inject some materials, such as a mixture of beast blood and medicinal herbs. Moreover, not only were these inscription patterns of different lengths, even their softness and hardness were different. Some inscription patterns were incomparably hard, while others were extremely soft. Every needle had its own place to be used. When an inscription master wanted to inscribe an inscription master, he would often need to use many different needles. When practicing inscription, you have to choose some simple inscription spirit inscriptions. Through this practice, you will become familiar with the inscription technique. In the future, when your skills are refined, you will be able to choose more complicated inscriptions. Yes, Lu Yi replied. He then asked curiously, "But madam, what should I use to practice?" Madame Yun revealed a meaningful smile. The first target of an inscription master's practice is only one person, and that is yourself. The corner of Lu Ye's eyes twitched. He originally wanted to catch some wild beasts or demonic beasts to practice. Only by practicing on your own body will you be able to accurately grasp the essence of inscription. Only then will you be able to better familiarize yourself with the strength of the needles. After all, the feedback from your own body is the most realistic and clear. When you first practice, don't think of reaching the heavens in a single step and directly inscribe spirit inscriptions. You have to start from yin and yang. Treat it as if you are learning the Tao of spirit inscriptions from the beginning. This disciple understands. Madame Yun smiled. With a wave of her hand, a jade bottle appeared in front of Lu Yi. There is some medicinal liquid in the bottle. Use this to practice. Even if you fail, it won't cause any harm to your body. After a short while, Madame Yun left. Lu Yi looked at the needles and the bottle of medicinal liquid in front of him. After thinking for a while, he lifted his right sleeve and revealed his arm. He picked up a needle with his left hand, dipped it in some medicinal liquid, and quickly and decisively pierced his right arm. He had already memorized the main points of the needle. It had to be fast, accurate, and stable. Moreover, the instant the needle pierced his arm, he had to inject the material dipped in the needle into his body to form a basic element. Every needle could only form one basic element. In other words, if he wanted to inscribe a spirit inscription, he had to insert as many needles as there were yin and yang elements in the spirit inscription. This was undoubtedly a huge test for an inscription master's mind and control of spirit inscriptions. The first needle fell, and as expected, it failed. It was easy for Lu Yi to use spirit inscriptions to activate and construct yin and yang element. However, the difficulty of using needles to construct yin and yang elements was not ordinary. Madame Yun said that he should treat it as starting from the beginning to practice the Tao of spirit inscriptions. This was not wrong. Lu Yi felt that he was like a beginner who was dabbling in spirit inscriptions for the first time. Everything had to start from the beginning. The first failure, the second failure, the third failure, the fourth failure. Fine needle holes continuously appeared on Lu Ye's right arm. There was a faint purple color in the needle holes. That was the color of the medicinal liquid. It wasn't until more than 2 hours later, when Lu Ye's needles fell, that a foundational element was finally completed. He raised his eyebrows and immediately dipped the needle in the medicinal liquid again. The second needle was inserted. Chapter 552. Lu Yi continued to practice. There was no place to insert needles on his right arm, so he inserted needles on his thigh. His thigh was covered with needle holes, so he moved to his lower abdomen. His physique was strong, and such needle holes had no effect on him. After one night, he could insert needles again. His body, on the other hand, was covered in a purple hue because of the purple medicinal juice. His skill was growing little by little at a speed visible to the naked eye, and Lu Yi could insert more and more basic elements. 2 days later, he could already insert 9 spirit tattoos. This kind of number spirit tattoo was the simplest spirit tattoo. It was only constructed by 9 basic elements. However, although it was also a spirit tattoo, it did not have any special function, so it was usually used by beginners to practice. Lu Yi had practiced this before. This time, he changed the way of inscribing and practiced again. The difficulty was undoubtedly much higher than before. With the first successful experience, he undoubtedly had a deeper understanding and comprehension of the way of inscribing. As time passed, the spirit tattoos that Lu Yi could inscribe became more and more complicated. It had to be said that inscribing was indeed very taxing on the mind. The spirit tattoos that he was inscribing now were only the simplest ones. For something like the void spirit tattoo, there were more than 3,000 basic elements, so he had to insert more than 3,000 needles. There could not be any mistakes or pauses during this period. It had to be done in one go. If the mind was not strong enough, it would be difficult to persist. In the blink of an eye, a few days later, in the hidden study, as Lu Yi inserted the last needle, a tattoo was formed on his right arm. This tattoo was not a number spirit tattoo, but a sharp spirit tattoo that he had first obtained from the talent tree. The shape of the spirit tattoo looked like an arrow cluster. Being able to successfully inscribe such a practical spirit tattoo undoubtedly meant that Lu Yi had already entered the door of the way of inscribing. The rest was to continue practicing and accumulating experience. However, because this tattoo was purely made of medicinal juice, it only looked good and could not exert any power. If it was made with a suitable mixture of beast blood and medicinal juice, it would be a real tattoo. If spiritual power was injected into it, this spirit tattoo could exert a sharp power. Lu Yi let out a long breath. Only now did he feel a trace of fatigue. It had been almost half a month since he entered Bright Heart Peak. During this time, he had not rested. Even if his physique was strong, he could not hold on any longer. It was time to bid farewell to Madame Yun. For a cultivator, the most important thing was to improve his cultivation realm. The way of spiritual tattoos was just a decoration on the road to becoming stronger. Lu Yi had the talent and foundation, but he would not neglect the essentials for that. He took out the books that he had read from his storage space and put them back on the bookshelf. He then looked for some books that he had not read and put them away. The books that he had chosen this time were mostly related to the way of inscriptions. Since he had learned the way of inscriptions from Madame Yun, he would naturally work hard in this area in his spare time. He walked out of the library and met Madame Yun. Knowing the reason for his visit, Madame Yun didn't urge him to stay. She only taught him some knowledge about the Tao of inscriptions before letting him go. Lu Yi bowed and expressed his thanks before leaving. Bathing in the sunlight for half a month, Lu Yi couldn't help but squint. Returning to Jade Bamboo Peak, Lu Yi first took a bath and changed into a clean set of clothes. Then, he fell into a deep sleep. When one's cultivation reached the Cloud River tier, the need for sleep was already very low. When cultivators meditated and cultivated, it was actually a kind of half-rest state. As long as one's cultivation efficiency was high enough, they would be full of energy. However, eating and sleeping were human nature. This was hard to erase no matter how high one's cultivation was. Lu Yi was awakened by a lick. Opening his eyes, he saw Hu Po's head in front of him, its large tongue licking his face happily. Pushing it away, Lu Yi sat up. He didn't know how long he had slept, but his exhaustion had long been swept away. Rubbing his face, he regained his energy. The aroma of food came from outside. Lu Yi walked out curiously, but saw a table full of food on the table outside. It was still steaming hot. Obviously, it had been prepared not long ago. The door was pushed open, and Yi walked in with a plate of food. Seeing Lu Yi, she said in surprise, "You're awake." Lu Yi answered and sat at the table. He picked up the chopsticks and started eating. Somewhat surprised, he asked, "You made this?" Yi giggled. "Second senior sister made it. I brought it over." No wonder the taste was exactly the same as second senior sister's. Thinking about it, Yi probably didn't have such skills. As he ate, he chatted casually with Yi. The table full of food was quickly swept clean by Lu Yi. After eating and drinking to his heart's content, Yi cleared the table, and Lu Yi walked out of the main hall to stretch his body. An hour later, in the main hall, Lu Yi and Yi sat facing each other, with Hu Po between them. "It's starting," Lu Yi said. Yi answered excitedly, "It's ready." Lu Yi smiled, and took out all the spirit sticks that belonged to him from his storage space. Then, he casually crushed a white spirit stick. A white vortex appeared, and a large amount of pure spiritual power surged out from that vortex. It condensed and lingered in front of the two people and one tiger. There was almost no need to refine it. Just by breathing, the power could flow into the body and become the capital of one's strength. The white spirit stick didn't last long. After a stick of incense worth of time, it completely disappeared. Lu Yi raised his hand and crushed another one. When the white spirit stick was exhausted, he used green. When the green spirit stick was exhausted, he used blue. After that, he used purple. Finally, he used 5 golden spirit sticks. When the effect of the second golden spirit stick was about to be exhausted, Lu Yi clearly felt that the river of spiritual power in his body had reached a limit, and the familiar feeling of fullness came again. This was a sign of a breakthrough. He had broken through to the third-order realm when he returned from the sealed world in the realm of beasts, and he had even taken a step towards the third-order realm. Later, he had obtained a purple spirit lot from Xia Qianqian, and after so many days of swallowing spirit pills, he was not far from the fourth-order realm. Now that he was about to break through, it was a matter of course. More and more spiritual power was being swallowed and refined, pouring into his body and increasing the volume of the river of spiritual power. Until a certain moment, Lu Yi felt the river of spiritual power in his body swell, and then the feeling of fullness suddenly disappeared, as if something had been broken, replaced by an indescribable sense of comfort. A wave of qi swept out in all directions. Fourth-order Cloud River Realm. Compared to his previous breakthroughs, the time it took for him to break through from the third order to the fourth order was undoubtedly much longer, but this was mainly because of the recent delay. Otherwise, it wouldn't have taken so long. If he had been a fourth-order Cloud River Realm cultivator in the hunting ground, killing the seventh order, He Bing wouldn't have been so troublesome. However, in the hunting ground, Lu Yi didn't dare to use the spirit stick to improve his strength. After all, a golden spirit stick could last for a day and night. If he encountered an enemy during this time, it would be too wasteful. Almost at the same time as he broke through to the fourth-order Cloud River Realm, Yi and Hu Po also experienced changes. The light on Yi's body flashed fiercely, and Hu Po's vitality also surged for a moment. Obviously, they had also broken through. However, Yi was a spirit body, and Hu Po was a monster beast, so it wasn't easy to distinguish their cultivation realms, but judging from the spiritual energy fluctuations they showed, they had undoubtedly stepped into the second-order Cloud River realm. There were still 3 golden spirit sticks left, so he continued to cultivate. 3 days later, all the spirit sticks were consumed. The 2 people and 1 tiger didn't break through again. Lu Yi was still a fourth-order cultivator, but after consuming 3 golden spirit sticks, he had accumulated quite a bit of fourth-order cultivation. As for Hu Po and Yi, they were both stuck at the third-order Cloud River realm. As long as they cultivated for a while, they should be able to break through. As one's cultivation improved, the consumption of resources would also increase, so naturally, the more spirit sticks one had, the better. The spirit sticks Lu Yi obtained needed to be shared with Yi and Hu Po. Fortunately, his cultivation environment wasn't too harsh. Having a good environment was naturally good, but it didn't matter if it wasn't. He could just take a spirit pill. This was an advantage that no cultivator could have. Several days had passed since the 1-month deadline with Li Baxian, so it was time to join him in the Cloud River battlefield. There were still 6 golden spirit sticks left in his hand, but he had to give them to his 4th senior brother and Feng Yuchan. After all, these things belonged to them. There was also a grade A spring spirit, which he had to find a suitable place to settle down in the Cloud River battlefield. Lu Yi didn't have high requirements for his cultivation environment, but Yi still needed it. 4th senior brother and Feng Yuchan also needed it, and there was also giant armor. Thinking of giant armor, Lu Ye's eyes couldn't help but twitch. The last time he contacted giant armor was nearly 2 months ago. At that time, this guy got lost in the Cloud River battlefield, so Lu Yi told him to wait for him in a certain place. After such a long time, he didn't know how giant armor was doing. Speaking of which, he had been in the hunting ground for nearly 20 days, but giant armor hadn't contacted him. After packing up a little, Lu Yi brought Hu Po and Yi out of Green Bamboo Peak and soon arrived at Principal Defender Peak. He met Shui Yuan and told her that he wanted to enter the Cloudy River battlefield. Shui Yuan did not stop him, and only reminded him to be careful. After all, 4 cultivators of the Cloudy River tier, entering the Cloudy River battlefield to cultivate was the fastest way to increase their cultivation level, because only there could cultivators obtain spirit lots. After bidding farewell to Shui Yuan, Lu Yi went straight to the Tianji Hall. He raised his hand and pressed on the Tianji pillar, connecting his mind to the Cloud River battlefield. In the next moment, a large number of light spots appeared in his consciousness. Each light spot represented a Tianji pillar. Lu Yi could choose any light spot and enter the location of the Tianji pillar. Last time, he entered like this, directly entering a Tianji business alliance. However, among the large number of light spots, there was one light spot that was particularly special. The other light spots were all white, and only this light spot was blue. After thinking for a moment, Lu Yi realized that this blue light spot represented the Tianji pillar that he had invited from the hunting ground. Chapter 553. The Tianji pillar could only be used by cultivators with their own merit points and those with their permission. Others could not use it. Therefore, although the Tianji pillar in the hunting ground was worth 100,000 merit points, it was still an abandoned object in the end. He had not agreed on a rendezvous point with Li Baxian, but Lu Yi had a feeling that they would be waiting for him near the hunting ground. Therefore, after a brief consideration, Lu Yi chose the blue dot of light. His vision changed and his body became light. In an instant, he disappeared from the Tianji Hall. Cloud River battlefield. Lu Yi appeared in front of the Tianji pillar in front of the hunting ground and immediately scanned the surroundings. There was nothing out of the ordinary. Although this place was very lively more than a month ago, it had been so long since the hunting ground closed that there were naturally no longer any cultivators lingering here. However, when he looked around, he could still vaguely see the various traces of the previous battle. In particular, the place where Lu Yi used the Fire Phoenix spirit pattern to wreak havoc was filled with scorched earth, showing the brutality of the battle that day. Lu Yi pressed his hand on the battlefield imprint and sent a message, 4th senior brother, I'm back. Soon, he received Li Baxian's reply. Lu Ye's guess was right. Li Baxian and Feng Yuchan had not gone far. Because they had not agreed on a rendezvous point, the two of them had been training in the nearby area for more than a month, waiting for Lu Yi to return. After a brief exchange, they agreed to meet at the nearby Tianji Business Alliance. Lu Yi then sent a message to Giant Armor. He gave a simple reply, location. On a certain spiritual peak, a tall, statue-like figure sat upright. His body was full of traces of wind and frost, and the place he sat was almost covered in fallen leaves. The tall figure was not breathing, and the aura on his body was extremely faint. There was not even much vitality flowing out of him. Even if someone passed by him, they would probably think that he was a dead person. After sitting here for nearly 2 months, the giant armor had entered a state of silence. Previously, when he received Lu Ye's message telling him to wait at the same place, he had obediently stayed there until now. He did not even notice the passage of time. It was only when the battlefield imprint moved that the giant armor slowly opened its eyes and lowered its head to check the information. Leaves fluttered down, and the 2 birds squatting on top of its head flapped their wings and flew up. Giant Carapace scratched its head and grabbed a bird's nest from the top of its head. It seemed like it could not bear to destroy the bird's nest. After some thought, it put it back on its head. Lu Ye asked him to report his current location. Although Giant Armor had some doubts, he still reported his current location. On the other side, Lu Ye looked at Giant Armor's information and was stunned because the location it reported was exactly the same as the one it gave 2 months ago. "You haven't left yet?" Roar. "Continue waiting for me there." After ending the communication with Lu Ye, Giant Armor vaguely sensed that something was wrong with its surroundings. It turned its head and saw giant wolves the size of calves, either crouching or standing, staring at it with their beastly eyes. There were many giant wolves, at least 100 of them. If it were any other cultivator who encountered such a thing, they would turn pale with fright. However, Giant Armor was only stunned for a moment because he did not see any malice in the eyes of these giant wolves. Instead, it was more of a human-like surprise and curiosity. These giant wolves did not seem to expect Giant Armor to be alive. After all, for nearly 2 months, Giant Armor had not moved at all, and his breathing was not obvious at all. All the giant wolves treated him as a dead object. After observing for a moment, Giant Armor closed its eyes again and quickly entered that strange state of silence again. Being surrounded by such a pack of wolves, he did not feel any sense of danger. In his mind, it was fine as long as the other party did not have any malice towards him. Moreover, even if the wolf pack really wanted to surround and attack him, he was not without the ability to protect himself. Seeing Giant Armor fall silent again, the slightly chaotic wolf pack also calmed down. Not long after, a huge wolf came in front of Giant Armor and sniffed it carefully, as if it wanted to confirm whether this fellow in front of it was dead or alive. In the end, it walked away in confusion. Night fell, and the moon was bright and the stars were few. Under the cover of the moonlight, a milky white glow suddenly appeared on Giant Armor's body. That glow seemed to produce a strange resonance with the moonlight in the sky, guiding the moonlight to pour down in torrents. As far as the eye could see, the moonlight surged endlessly on the huge Spirit Peak. The entire Spirit Peak was bathed in that milky white glow, making the Spirit Peak appear incomparably sacred. Lu Ye had long known that Giant Armor could absorb moonlight to cultivate. Hupa had also cultivated with Giant Armor in the past. According to Yi's observations, Hupa had benefited greatly, but unfortunately, ever since they parted at the Spirit Stream battlefield, they had not seen each other again. The reason this wolf pack was attracted here was because of the strange phenomenon that occurred on the Spirit Peak every night. If Hupa could benefit from cultivating with Giant Armor, the wolf pack could naturally benefit as well. 5 days after Giant Armor settled down here, this wolf pack discovered his existence. The thought process of monstrous beasts was very simple. Regardless of whether Giant Armor was dead or alive, it was still an existence that could greatly benefit them. So even though Giant Armor had woken up earlier, the wolf pack did not show the slightest bit of malice. In their minds, Giant Armor was equivalent to their tribe's sacred relic. It could rapidly strengthen their tribe, so they had been guarding this place all this time. As the moonlight poured down in torrents, the giant wolves instinctively raised their heads and breathed in and out. The moon was high in the sky, and the strange phenomenon on the Spirit Peak became even more obvious. The wolf pack was not the only one attracted by this strange phenomenon. There were other monstrous beasts as well. Monstrous beasts had a very strong sense of territory. A sacred relic that could strengthen their tribe had long been seen as their exclusive property by the wolf pack. How could they allow other monstrous beasts to encroach on it? So almost every night when there was moonlight, the wolf pack would engage in a great battle with the other monstrous beasts that were attracted here. It was precisely these battles that established the wolf pack's position as sole owner of this territory. Giant Armor was completely unaware of all this. He always felt that he had only rested for a short while in a guest room of the Tianji Business Alliance. Lu Yi was reading and cultivating. There was a knock on the door, and Lu Yi stood up to open it. Li Baxian and Feng Yuechan, who were wearing the masks of a boy and a girl, arrived together. Lu Yi stood up to welcome them. Li Baxian's face was full of shame as he took off his mask. "Little junior brother, I've made you suffer at the hunting ground. Your senior brother wasn't able to help much. I'm ashamed." During this period of time, Li Baxian would feel uneasy whenever he thought of what happened at the hunting ground. Fortunately, Lu Yi had a strong foundation and was blessed by the heavens. In the end, he managed to escape from that hopeless situation. Lu Yi said, "Senior brother, you're too serious. When I was being hunted down, I received help from many experts of the Grand Heaven Alliance. If it weren't for senior brother's connections, I wouldn't have been able to last until the end." Li Baxian sighed. "In the end, you still have to be strong yourself." In the Spirit Stream battlefield, he and Feng Yuechan had been dominant for many years. However, in the Cloud River battlefield, their former fame had not brought them convenience, but more danger. This made him sigh with emotion. How could Lu Yi not feel the same way? Before the hunting ground, he didn't have too many concerns when walking around the Cloud River battlefield, but after what happened at the hunting ground, he believed that Myriad Demon Ridge would spare no effort to investigate his whereabouts and find a way to hunt him down. In the future, his situation in the Cloud River battlefield would not be as peaceful as before. Feng Yuechan persuaded from the side, "Strength grows bit by bit, there's no need to rush. Compared to others, our cultivation is already improving very quickly." Senior Sister Feng is right. Lu Yi invited the two of them to take a seat and asked Yi to serve them tea. Only then did he take out the Six Paths Spirit Lot and push it to the two of them. "This is Senior Martial Brother and Senior Martial Sister Feng's share." Li Baxian and Feng Yuechan didn't refuse and each took 3 spirit sticks. With these golden spirit sticks, they could break through to the 5th order in a short time. This kind of cultivation speed was not slow, and with their current 5th order cultivation, even if they encountered a 7th order master in the future, they might not be their opponent. Lu Yi then took out his spirit beast bag and took out the white and fat grade A spring spirit. "This is a grade A spring spirit?" Everyone present, except for Lu Yi, was seeing this for the first time and couldn't help feeling curious. Yi came forward and poked it with her hand, only to see the grade A spring spirit curl up. "It's still alive?" Feng Yuechan was surprised. "Should we use this spring spirit for ourselves or sell it? What does senior brother think?" Lu Yi asked. Li Baxian pondered for a moment before saying, "If we sell it, we definitely won't have to worry about it, but ordinary materials won't have much use for us. If we use spirit sticks to trade, we don't know how much this grade A spring spirit will be worth. Besides, others may not be able to gather enough spirit sticks in a short time. Right now, we're only 4th order cultivators and will be staying in the Cloud River battlefield for a long time. If we can obtain a grade A spirit land, our cultivation will be more efficient." Lu Yi nodded. "I think so too. Rather than selling this grade A spring spirit in exchange for some spirit sticks, it was indeed better to use it for themselves. Besides, even if they reached the true lake realm in the future and left the Cloud River battlefield, The grade A spirit land they left behind could be passed down to the disciples of their respective sects. On the Cloud River battlefield, there were many spirit lands that had been passed down from generation to generation. They were all exclusive territories of certain sects. But if we really want to use it for ourselves, there are some problems that need to be solved. The biggest problem is the location of the spirit land. Li Baxian said slowly. With a grade A spring spirit, as long as they were in the Cloud River battlefield, they could choose any place to create a grade A spirit land. But if the location was not chosen well, it would be troublesome in the future. First of all, they had to ensure that it was sufficiently hidden. But for Cloud River realm cultivators who came and went, how could there be a particularly hidden place in the Cloud River battlefield? Unless it was a forbidden area that cultivators didn't want to set foot in, like the 10,000 Poison Forest or the Land of Fire in the Spirit Stream battlefield. Even with Lu Yi setting up the array formation, it wasn't too safe. Back then, Lu Yi had left behind an array formation in the Grade C Spirit Land, but in the end it was still broken through, and even the Spring Spirit was taken away. Chapter 554. So for Lu Yi and the others, if they really wanted to use this Grade A spring for themselves, the first thing they had to solve was the problem of choosing a location. After all, their cultivation bases were not high. With their cultivation bases, occupying a third-grade spiritual land was not a big problem. It would not be easy to attract covetous eyes. However, occupying a first-grade spiritual land was a different story. Once it was discovered by outsiders, it might cause some trouble. Moreover, no matter who they were, their identities were very sensitive, and they were all people that Myriad Devil Ridge wanted to get rid of. Once the fact that they had a spirit land was exposed, it would definitely attract a large number of cultivators from Myriad Devil Ridge. At that time, not only would they not be able to keep the spirit land, even their safety would be a problem. I'll think of a way to choose a location. Li Baxian pondered for a moment. He had been in the Cloud River battlefield longer than Lu Yi, and his connections weren't something that Lu Yi could compare to. It was best to leave this matter to him. Then I'll have to trouble Senior Apprentice Brother. Feng Yuechan said, this Grade A spring should create a small-scale spirit land, but even a small-scale spirit land can hold 5 people. We only have 4 people now, so if Junior Apprentice Brother Lu has any suitable candidates, you can rope them in, so that we don't waste a spot. Speaking of candidates, I have one on my side. He turned to Li Baxian. Senior Apprentice Brother, do you still remember Zhu Jia? Feng Yuechan hadn't seen Zhu Jia before, but Li Baxian had. However, they didn't have much interaction, so after pondering for a moment, he remembered. That body cultivator? Yes, he came to the Cloud River battlefield a few months before me. I was going to find him before the hunting ground, but I was delayed by the hunting ground, and haven't been able to meet up with him. Li Baxian nodded. His physique seems to be a bit unusual. Junior Apprentice Brother has good eyes. Since that's the case, Junior Apprentice Brother can call him over to meet up with us, and we'll have 5 people. And among the 5 of them, 1 body and 1 weapon, 1 sword and 2 spells, such a lineup was very reasonable. If they encountered any trouble in the future, they could work together to deal with it. Lu Yi sighed. Zhu Jia doesn't seem to be able to tell directions. I told him to come and meet up with me, but he got lost in a forest deep in the mountains. I told him to wait for me there, so I still need to find him. Li Baxian couldn't help but laugh. So there's something like that? It was hard to imagine that someone as big as Zhu Jia could get lost in the Cloudy River battlefield. However, there were always some people with special temperaments in this world that could not be judged by common sense. In that case, Junior Martial Brother Lu should go and look for Junior Martial Brother Giant Armor first. It just so happens that Senior Martial Brother and I are cultivating here with the help of the Spirit Stick. Later on, we'll look for a place to place the Spring Spirit. That's good. Lu Yi nodded in agreement. After the discussion was done, Lu Yi did not stay for long. Giant Beetle had been waiting for him for almost 2 months. He did not know if it was anxious. A moment later, Lu Yi walked out from the front of the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance and summoned his flying spirit artifact. He took to the sky and flew towards the direction that the giant armor had given him earlier. Based on the map, giant armor's current location was in a mountain range called Mount Tai Mang. From the map, it could be seen that Mount Tai Mang was extremely large, and the core area was clearly marked with the word Overlord. This meant that there were Overlord-class demonic beasts living in the deepest part of the Taimong Mountains. Overlord was not a cultivation realm, but a title. It was a title that had reached the pinnacle of strength. The Overlord-class demonic beasts on the Spirit Stream battlefield had reached the limit of what the Spirit Stream battlefield could accommodate. The same was true for the Overlord-class demonic beasts on the Cloud River battlefield. They had reached the limit of what the Cloud River battlefield could accommodate. The strength of the two was completely different. After all, their cultivation realms were different. Under normal circumstances, places where Overlord-class demonic beasts lived were basically forbidden areas for cultivators. No cultivator would be willing to trespass into an Overlord-class demonic beast's territory unless they were tired of living. This was also the reason why Lu Yi was able to establish himself as an overlord in the Myriad Devil Ridge as a cultivator, causing a huge impact on the hearts of the large sections. Since ancient times, no cultivator on the Spirit Stream battlefield had ever achieved such a feat. Even Feng Yuechan, who had dominated the Spirit Rhino ranking for more than 10 years, had not been able to do so. The fact that there were Overlord-class demonic beasts at the core of Mount Tai Mang undoubtedly meant that this was not a good place. In such a deep mountain forest, there were bound to be many demonic beasts living there. In the wilderness, the deeper one went, the more dangerous it was. Mount Tai Mang was not close. Even with Lu Ye's current speed, it would take him at least 10 days to reach it. Fortunately, he had Yi and Hu Po to accompany him along the way, so the journey was not boring. Furthermore, he could take turns to fly with Yi, so if they traveled day and night, the journey time would be cut in half. Flying along the way, Lu Yi enjoyed the unique scenery of the Cloud River battlefield. Nothing happened along the way. Occasionally, he would encounter some cultivators, but most of them did not disturb each other. There were a few who wanted to cause trouble because of their higher cultivation or numbers, but Lu Yi avoided them in advance or used his flight wings to escape. With his current 4th order cultivation, as long as he wasn't targeted by some 8th or 9th order masters, he generally wouldn't be in any danger. There were quite a few 8th or 9th order masters on the Cloud River battlefield, but no one would chase after a cultivator from an unknown faction for no reason. During the journey, Lu Yi did not forget to take pills and cultivate. 6 days passed in a flash. The travel-worn Lu Yi broke into Mount Tai Mang and contacted Giant Armor again to determine its exact location. Looking at the map, Lu Yi raised his brow. Giant Armor was quite courageous. Its current location was not on the periphery of Mount Tai Mang, but rather deep inside. After staying there for so long, Lu Yi did not know if it had encountered any danger. However, this guy had a special physique and thick skin. His ability to protect himself was something that Lu Yi could not compare to, so there was no need to worry about his safety. There were quite a few figures of cultivators appearing and disappearing in the Taimong Mountains. Most of them were in groups, and very few of them were alone. This was a paradise for monster beasts. In the entire Cloud River battlefield, there were 7 or 8 places where monster beasts gathered like Mount Tai Mang. Such places were naturally popular for cultivators. Cultivators could hunt demonic beasts here and collect some natural treasures in exchange for some cultivation resources they needed. Although the cultivators from the various large sects had a monthly salary, it was basically not enough to meet the cultivators' cultivation needs. The reason for this was not entirely because the sects were stingy, but more because it was intentional. If the sect's monthly salary was enough to meet a cultivator's cultivation needs, Then there would be no need for cultivators to go out on adventures, and it would be detrimental to their own growth. Therefore, no matter how prosperous the sects were, the monthly salary given to their disciples would never meet all their need. The more powerful the sects were, the more it was like this, so that their disciples would develop the habit of relying on themselves for everything. Lu Yi had enough cultivation resources. Even if he did not enter the Cloud River battlefield, he could still increase his own cultivation by consuming spirit pills in his sect. However, there was not much meaning in growing like this. Cultivators could only obtain strength that matched their own realm by constantly experiencing all kinds of hardships and battles. In the end, the growth of one's cultivation was just for show. Less than half a day after Lu Yi entered Mount Taimang, he felt the aftermath of several battles. It was obvious that some cultivators were fighting with monster beasts. He observed one of the battles from afar and found that the cultivators had a tacit understanding. Some were on guard, some were fighting head-on, and some were attacking from the shadows. With such cooperation, as long as they chose a suitable opponent, it would not take long for the battle to end and they could obtain some spoils of war. Along the way, they encountered a few monster beasts that were alone. They were not very strong, and with the cooperation of Lu Yi and Hu Po, they easily killed them. They collected the monster beasts' blood, monster cores, and some useful items from the monster beasts in case of an emergency. When he was in the Spirit Stream tier, Lu Yi had also killed some monster beasts. However, the items from those monster beasts were not very valuable, so he did not waste any effort to collect them. However, it was different when he reached the Cloud River tier. Not to mention other things, Cloud River tier monster beasts had monster cores, which were Hu Po's favorite. Previously, when he left the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance, he had spent nearly 10,000 merit points to buy a batch of monster cores and put them in Hu Po's storage pouch as snack. Moreover, the blood of monster beasts could be used to cultivate the Tao of inscriptions. As for the other miscellaneous materials, some could be used to refine pills, some could be used to refine tools, and so on. It all depended on the person who used them. The deeper they went, the stronger the monster beasts they encountered. On the contrary, the figures of cultivators became fewer and fewer. If the outermost area of the Great Mang Mountains was a place where any Cloud River tier cultivator could enter to gain experience, then in Lu Ye's current location, without a 5th or 6th order Cloud River tier cultivator, it would be difficult to guarantee his safety. At this point, Lu Yi did not dare to fly in the air unscrupulously. There were many bird-type monster beasts in this damned place. If he encountered them in the air, it would be difficult for him to have a good ending. He really did not understand. Giant Beetle had just lost its way. How did it run into such a deep mountain forest? When he found it later, he would have to teach it a good lesson. In the future, it should not run around in such a dangerous place. Night fell. Lu Yi was looking for a secluded place to rest when he suddenly sensed something and looked in a certain direction. There seemed to be some voices coming from that direction. It was the sound of people talking, and there seemed to be quite a number of them. After a moment of thought, he stuffed Hu Po into his spirit beast pouch and enhanced himself with his concealment spirit tattoo, quietly moving in that direction. A moment later, an open space appeared in front of him. There were at least 30 or 40 cultivators gathered in the open space. Some of them were alone, while others were in groups of 3 or 5. Lu Yi did not know what they were doing here. However, many of them were meditating and conserving their strength. It seemed that they were about to take action. With so many people gathered, it was obvious that they were not from the same sect or even the same camp. Moreover, some of them were obviously injured. To be continued. Chapter 555. At the periphery of the open space, Lu Yi concealed himself and observed silently. He still didn't understand why these people were gathered here, nor did he know their origins, so he naturally didn't want to reveal himself. However, one after another, many cultivators rushed over from all directions and walked into the open space. Seeing this situation, Lu Yi thought for a moment, then simply removed his concealment state and walked forward boldly. A few gazes swept over, but they quickly moved away. The mask Lu Yi wore concealed his appearance, and he had stored the amber in his spirit beast pouch in advance, so even if some people thought he was hiding his head and tail, they didn't think much of it. Although not every cultivator liked to do this, there were still many who wore masks on the battlefield. He casually found a corner and sat down cross-legged, taking a posture of taking things as they came, while silently paying attention to the movements around him. Soon, he heard some things from the conversations of some people, but these people didn't talk specifically. He could only vaguely infer that some kind of treasure had appeared nearby. Every night when there was moonlight, a strange phenomenon would appear, and the reason these people gathered here was to seize the treasure. Unfortunately, the place where the treasure appeared was extremely dangerous, with a large number of powerful monster beasts gathered in the surroundings, so even though these cultivators had worked hard for many days, no one had been able to find out what the treasure was. Lu Yi had heard of the emergence of rare treasures in the past. It could be considered a type of opportunity, but treasures that could produce such a phenomenon were rare. Under normal circumstances, such a phenomenon would be extremely valuable. It was no wonder that so many cultivators had gathered here. And this was only what Lu Yi saw. If he didn't see it, there might be more cultivators gathering. After discovering the purpose of these people gathering here, Lu Yi suddenly lost interest. He had only come here to look for the giant armor. Although the treasure was good, so many people had spent many days and still failed to obtain it, so he didn't feel that he had any special hope. Thinking so, Lu Yi was about to leave. However, at that moment, a low shout sounded, "It's begun!" Once this was said, the cultivators gathered here all stood up and flew into the air, looking in a certain direction. Looking in the direction they were looking, Lu Yi saw a pillar of moonlight pouring down from the sky above a spirit mountain. The entire spirit mountain was enveloped by a kind of majestic and hazy moonlight, making the spirit mountain exude a kind of sacred aura. A strange phenomenon in the sky, as expected, a treasure has appeared! Someone exclaimed, his eyes filled with surprise. This kind of treasure that could produce strange phenomena was no small matter. If a Cloud River tier cultivator obtained it, even if they couldn't use it, they could still sell it for a large amount of cultivation resources. This treasure must be very attractive to monster beasts. Every night when there's moonlight, a large number of monster beasts gather there and kill each other. It's a pity that so far, no one has been able to clearly see what that treasure is. On the contrary, many people have died there. Everyone, when we take action later, we must sincerely cooperate. At the very least, we must first understand what kind of treasure it is. Fellow Taoist, you are right. As the conversation entered Lu Ye's ears, he stared fixedly at the strange phenomenon of the tilted moonlight and frowned. Why did this scene look a little familiar? He couldn't help but recall the scene in the Heaven Expanse sect when Hupo cultivated under the moon with giant armor. Comparatively, the scene in front of him was a little more magnificent. Lu Yi suddenly had some bad guesses in his heart with this thought. He hurriedly sent a message to Giant Armor. Soon, he received a reply from Giant Armor. Lu Yi thought for a moment and gave him some instructions. The next moment, the strange phenomena on the mountain peak where moonlight poured down suddenly disappeared without a trace. The corner of Lu Ye's eye twitched, and he instantly understood that he was right. That was not the sign of some strange treasure appearing at all, but Giant Armor cultivating. A Cloud River tier cultivator causing such a big commotion and even attracting so many cultivators to investigate, there was no one else. Just as Lu Yi was cursing in his heart, the disappearance of the strange phenomena caused the expressions of many cultivators to change. Someone succeeded? If someone hadn't succeeded, that strange phenomenon couldn't have disappeared for no reason. Once this was said, many cultivators became anxious and hurried in the direction of the Spirit Mountain. At the same time, low growls and roars also came from the direction of the spirit mountain, accompanied by chaotic fluctuations of spirit power. Under the moonlight, many birds flew in the air, and colorful lights began to bloom. The cultivators hadn't entered yet, but the demonic beasts there had already started fighting because of the disappearance of the strange phenomena. To many cultivators, this kind of scene was already not strange because almost every night with moonlight, the demonic beasts there would be a chaotic battle, and many powerful demonic beasts had already died near the spirit mountain. Wolf howls sounded, one after another, and gradually suppressed the other beast howls. Lu Yi floated in midair and stared fixedly in the direction of the spirit mountain. There was not a single cultivator around, and he had a headache. The strange phenomena were brought about by giant armor's cultivation. Not only did it attract many cultivators, but it also attracted many demonic beasts to fight endlessly over there. One could imagine how chaotic the scene there was. Giant armor's situation was naturally not very good. Lu Yi pondered for a moment, then flew over in a flash. However, before he could get close, a huge shadow fell from the sky. Accompanying the shadow was a bolt of lightning that resembled a swimming dragon. It was a storm thunder eagle, and judging from the power of its attack, it was a demonic beast equivalent to an 8th order Cloud River Realm cultivator. Lu Yi didn't dare to take such a ferocious attack head-on, so he immediately controlled the spirit boat and dodged to the left and right while falling straight down. But the lightning was like a living creature, chasing after him relentlessly. Landing in a sorry state, Lu Yi unsheathed his mountain coiling saber and slashed at the incoming lightning. The huge impact sent Lu Yi flying diagonally, and the power of the lightning coursed through his body, causing him to feel numb. Barely stabilizing his body, the storm thunder eagle attacked again. Lu Yi raised his hand and slashed out a few saber waves, slightly obstructing the storm thunder eagle, and at the same time pouncing to the side. A fishy smell lingered at the tip of his nose, and at the same time, a large amount of gray fog ignited on his talent tree. A strong wind came from behind, and Lu Yi hurriedly fell to the side. In his field of vision, a thick figure swept past in front of him. It was a poisonous python that had been lying in ambush nearby. It originally wanted to sneak attack Lu Yi, but Lu Yi dodged and took the opportunity to pounce on the storm thunder eagle. The two huge demonic beasts instantly clashed, and the eagle's cry rang out continuously. A moment later, the thunder eagle flew up high, its sharp claws digging into the poisonous python's flesh. While the poisonous python's body coiled around the thunder eagle's body, Lu Yi was left standing on the spot, sweating profusely. The scene was extremely chaotic. Many demonic beasts of different races gathered here to fight, and with the addition of cultivators, the area within 100 kilometers was a complete mess. Lu Yi had only traveled 10 kilometers, but he had already encountered several dangers. He even saw a cultivator suspected to be a 7th order Cloud River Realm cultivator get slapped to death by a bear-like demonic beast. His death was extremely miserable. He couldn't go any deeper. This place was too dangerous. Even a 9th order Cloud River Realm cultivator might not be able to guarantee his own safety here. No wonder he had heard the cultivators say that many days had passed, but no one had figured out what the strange treasure was. This place was not close to the Spirit Peak where giant armor was cultivating, but it was already so cruel. One could imagine what the situation would be like closer to the Spirit Peak. Trying to figure out what the strange treasure was in such a situation was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Moreover, the cultivators' plans were destined to fail, because there was no strange treasure at all. There was only giant armor. Lu Yi was very curious. How did giant armor survive in such a chaotic scene? Did the demonic beasts not attack him? Even if he had entered the Cloud River battlefield a few months earlier than Lu Yi, and even if his monster core still had excess energy, giant armor's cultivation shouldn't be too high. But thinking about it carefully, the demonic beasts might really not attack giant armor, because the phenomenon brought about by giant armor's cultivation could also benefit the demonic beast. This was also the reason why so many demonic beasts had gathered here. Raising his hand and pressing on the battlefield mark, Lu Yi sent a message to Giant Armor, then quietly retreated to the periphery. Giant Armor had stayed here for nearly 2 months without any danger, so he should be safe tonight. After dawn, Lu Yi could just ask him to meet up with him. Lu Yi was close to him now, so he couldn't get lost. Time passed, and the battle between the demonic beasts continued. Most of the cultivators had already retreated, because the phenomenon was gone. This meant that someone had likely taken away the unknown treasure. Since that was the case, they naturally didn't take the risk. However, there were also bold cultivators who took advantage of the chaotic situation to take advantage of it. Normally, it wasn't easy to kill high-level demonic beasts, but here there were some opportunities to take advantage. For example, at this moment, Lu Yi was staring in front of him in a daze, feeling the wonders of fate. Not far in front of him, a huge figure was desperately struggling. It was the Tempest Eagle that had attacked him before. The Tempest Eagle's condition was obviously not good, because there was a poisonous python coiled around its body, and the ground was covered in beast blood. The poisonous python was not moving, so it was most likely dead. However, the Tempest Eagle's condition wasn't much better. Lu Yi could clearly feel its vitality rapidly fading away, and its body was covered in a layer of faint green aura. This was clearly a sign of poisoning. Lu Yi didn't expect to run into these 2 demonic beasts when he retreated in this direction. After observing for a while and confirming that the Tempest Eagle was at the end of its tether, Lu Yi immediately raised his saber and charged forward. The killing intent startled the struggling Tempest Eagle, and its sharp gaze swept over. Even if its life was hanging by a thread, it still displayed the majesty of a king. Lu Yi unsheathed his mountain saber and dragged it along, easily dodging a few lightning strikes that were only as thick as chopsticks. As he leaped high, he slashed down with his saber. The sharp cry of the Tempest Eagle rang out, and the sharp blade cut through the Tempest Eagle's head, causing blood to spurt into the sky. To be continued. Chapter 556. These 2 monster beasts were comparable to 8th or 9th order Cloud River Realm cultivators, and Lu Yi was no match for any of them, but at this moment, one of them was dead while the other was seriously injured. Lu Yi could not help but feel that he had been blessed by the heavens. Taking out the empty water bag, Lu Yi collected the beast blood and then took out the monster cores of the 2 monster beasts. Each monster core was not small. The Thunder Eagle's monster core was wrapped in a faint trace of thunder, while the poisonous python's monster core was a dark green color. At a glance, it was obvious that it was quite poisonous. After all, these were the essence of the 2 monster beasts' cultivation and were completely compatible with their own attribute. The Thunder Eagle's monster core could be fed to Hu Po, while the poisonous python's monster core could be given to Hua Ci. She should like it. Next, Lu Yi took some materials that he thought were valuable, such as eagle claws, eagle beak, eagle feathers, and so on. Finally, he dismembered the entire body of the poisonous python and put it into his storage space, then calmly withdrew. The flesh and blood of demonic beasts had always been a great supplement. Those body cultivators had to consume large amounts of demonic beasts' flesh and blood almost every day because this was the only way to strengthen their vitality. Therefore, no matter where it was, there was no lack of demand for the flesh and blood of demonic beasts. As for snake meat, it was Lu Yi and Hu Po's favorite. Since the first time they ate it, they could not forget it. This was a rare opportunity, so Lu Yi naturally would not miss it. As his figure disappeared into the distance, the noise behind him gradually disappeared. Lu Yi found a secluded place, laid down a spirit array, and waited. Time passed, and from time to time, the figures of cultivators and monster beasts would pass by in the air or nearby. It was not until dawn that the chaos completely subsided. Lu Yi sent a message to Giant Armor, asking him to come and meet up with him. On top of the spirit peak, Giant Armor's tall figure stood. Hundreds of giant wolves gathered around him from all directions. Many of them were staring at him, especially the leader of the pack. It was completely white and more majestic than the other wolves. At this moment, it was standing 30 feet away from Giant Armor. It lowered its head slightly and looked down at him. Its eyes were filled with confusion. After a night of bloody battle, many of the giant wolves were injured and were now silently licking their wounds. There were also giant wolves who dragged the corpses of other monster beasts over and ate with their companions, their mouths full of blood. The wolf pack was very united, so no matter how many other monster beasts came, they would be able to repel them. This was the biggest reason why they had been able to occupy this spirit peak recently. But at this moment their sacred relic, not only alive, he was also alive, showing signs of leaving. How could the wolf packs leaving? They had been here for less than 2 months, but they had already personally experienced the benefits that the holy relic brought to their race. The mountain breeze blew, and Giant Armor, who was staring at the giant wolf, had a helpless expression. He never knew that there were so many wonderful things around him. After being alerted by Lu Ye's message last night, the chaos around him had left him at a loss for a moment. Fortunately, he knew that the situation was not good at that time, so he did not dare to act rashly and had been waiting in place. With the protection of the wolf pack, other monster beasts and even cultivators would not be able to get close to this spirit mountain. Now that Lu Ye had sent him a message saying that he was nearby, he had to meet up with him. But the wolf didn't seem to want him to leave. Although there was no communication, Giant Armor could feel the wolf's thoughts. After looking at each other for a long time, Giant Armor said in a muffled voice, "Lu Ye is looking for me." The wolf tilted its head, as if it didn't understand. Although its strength was comparable to a Cloud River Realm 9th Order, and it understood human language, monster beasts lived in the mountains and forests all year round. They rarely came into contact with cultivators, so how could they understand human language? Giant Armor put his plan into action. He walked forward and raised his hand to push the wolf away. "Don't block the way," he said in a low voice. With a casual push, he pushed the wolf, who was taller than him, back a few steps. Giant Armor walked past the wolf and headed in a certain direction. The surrounding giant wolves, whether they were healing their wounds or eating the flesh, all stood up and looked at the tall figure that was about to leave. They seemed to be at a loss as to what to do. Their tribe's sacred artifact was running away. How could they let this happen? With a howl, the alpha wolf strode forward and caught up with Giant Armor. It lowered its head and gently lifted it up, causing Giant Armor to fly high into the air. When he landed, he was sitting firmly on the alpha wolf's back. If the sacred artifact wanted to leave, it couldn't be stopped. Then follow. Seeing through the wolf's thoughts, Giant Armor didn't refuse. He raised his hand and pointed in a direction, this way. The wolf took a step forward, and its vigorous figure shuttled through the mountain forest. Behind him was a large pack of giant wolves. Wherever they passed, the earth quaked and the mountains shook. Dozens of kilometers away, at Lu Ye's hiding place, he had already released Hu Pu from his spirit beast bag. Yi was lurking nearby on guard. After an incense stick's worth of time, Lu Ye suddenly felt a trace of abnormality. He quickly raised his hand and pressed it to the ground. He couldn't help but frown. There was some movement on the ground. It seemed that many monster beasts were galloping. To be able to make such a big movement, there was no doubt that there were many monster beasts. And judging from the movement, it seemed that they were getting closer and closer. This was not a place to stay for long. At this moment, a message came from the battlefield imprint. Lu Ye checked and found that it was from Yi. Lu Ye, Giant Armor brought a lot of giant wolves over. Lu Ye looked at the message and didn't understand for a moment. What did she mean by bringing a lot of giant wolves over? Just as he was about to ask for clarification, he saw a snow-white figure in his field of vision dashing over. On the back of the snow-white figure, there was another tall figure. Looking at that tall figure, Lu Yi was slightly dazed. Hu Pu, who was crouching on Lu Ye's shoulder, also widened his tiger eyes and stared at this scene in astonishment. A moment later, the snow-white figure stopped 100 feet away from Lu Yi. Its wolf eyes quietly stared at Lu Yi, its soft fur fluttering in the wind. And behind this figure, there were no less than 100 giant wolves following closely. Lu Yi finally understood what Yi meant. Giant armor really did bring a lot of giant wolves over. What was going on? Lu Yi was unable to react for a while. Giant armor was just an individual cultivator. He had never heard of him having the ability to control beasts, so how could he be with so many giant wolves? And looking at his posture at the moment, it seemed that this entire wolf pack was obeying his orders. Lu Yi couldn't help but recall some of the movements last night. He had indeed heard the howls of wolves one after another. Now that he thought about it, it should have been caused by this wolf pack. What surprised him even more was the quality of this wolf pack. The one carrying the giant armor was definitely a monster beast comparable to a Cloud River 9th Order monster beast. As for the other giant wolves, they all exuded a ferocious aura. Most of them were 4th or 5th Order monster beasts, with 8th or 9th Order monster beasts everywhere. It was hard to imagine how terrifying the combat power of such a wolf pack was. After not seeing each other for more than half a year, Giant Armor was obviously very happy to see each other again. There was even a hint of a smile on its usually dull face. It flipped over and jumped down from the wolf's back, striding towards Lu Yi. When he got close, his shadow covered Lu Yi. Lu Yi looked up at this big man and was surprised to find that he had grown taller again. His plain clothes couldn't hide his figure, and his exposed skin had a bronze luster to it, as if it was made of fine iron. He raised his big hand and patted Lu Yi on the shoulder, causing Lu Yi to lower his body. Giant Armor grinned and didn't say anything, simply expressing the joy of reuniting after a long time. Hoopa jumped up from Lu Ye's shoulder and landed on Giant Armor's head before skillfully lying down. In the wilderness, two figures, one tall and one short, stood opposite each other. Behind the tall figure, hundreds of snow-white giant wolves waited quietly. The scene was indescribably strange. Lu Yi tilted his body and looked through Giant Armor's shadow, looking at the giant wolves and asking in a low voice, "What's the situation?" For the time being, these giant wolves were brought here by Giant Armor and didn't show any malice towards him or Giant Armor, but Lu Yi was still a little worried. They hadn't seen each other for more than half a year, so how could Giant Armor have subdued such a wolf pack? "They're following me," Giant Armor said helplessly. "Why?" Giant Armor shook his head, indicating that he didn't know either. He had been waiting for Lu Yi on the Spirit Peak, but when he opened his eyes a few days ago, he saw a large pack of giant wolves gathered around him. Today, when he wanted to leave, the wolf pack followed him. He didn't understand why the wolf pack insisted on following him. Seeing that he didn't understand, Lu Yi gave up helplessly and said, "Then come with me. I've made an appointment with 4th Senior Brother and Senior Sister Phone. Let's go find them." Giant Armor had no objections. Lu Yi raised his hand and summoned his spirit boat. He called out to Yi, who was hiding nearby, and immediately revealed herself. She first greeted Giant Armor before leaping onto the spirit boat. Giant Armor also stepped onto the spirit boat. However, at that moment, a snow-white figure charged over like a gust of wind and crashed into the spirit boat, causing it to flip over. Lu Yi and the others also fell to the ground in a sorry state. Lu Yi unsheathed his mountain pan saber and looked warily at the alpha wolf standing not far away. However, he quickly put away his saber because although the wolf had knocked over the spirit boat, it didn't seem to have any strong intention of attacking. It seemed to only want to stop them from leaving. It wasn't him who was stopping them, but Giant Armor. The alpha wolf didn't seem to want Giant Armor to leave. Combining last night's experience with what he saw now, Lu Yi vaguely had some guesses in his heart. The phenomenon caused by the giant armor's cultivation had attracted so many monstrous beasts. There was no doubt that the phenomenon was very useful to monstrous beasts. If the wolf pack wanted to keep the giant armor for this reason, it made sense. After pondering for a moment, Lu Yi said, think of a way to communicate with them. Ask them what they want. Yi nodded and said, okay. Yi naturally couldn't communicate with monster beasts on her own, but with Hu Po's help, it would be possible. Hu Po jumped down from giant armor's head. His body trembled, and his monster chi surged. He revealed his true form and walked majestically to the alpha wolf. Then, Lu Yi saw a scene that he couldn't understand. Hu Po and the wolf howled and howled. They communicated for about the time it took for a stick of incense to burn before they turned around and walked back. Yi stood beside Lu Yi and sensed Hu Po's thoughts. She understood. They don't want giant armor to leave. They want giant armor to stay. The alpha wolf also said that giant armor is their sacred item. Chapter 557. A holy relic? Lu Yi frowned. That's the general meaning. You can also understand it as a totem, Yi continued. Yi continued to explain, they've been with giant armor for a long time. Giant armor can help their pack increase their strength, so they won't let giant armor leave. The alpha also said that we can leave and they won't stop us. Lu Yi had come this time to bring giant armor to meet up with fourth senior brother and Feng Yuechan. If he couldn't bring giant armor with him, then what was the point of coming here? Of course, they could force their way out. With his and giant armor's current cultivation, they could fly even without flying spirit artifact. This pack of demon wolves didn't seem to have the ability to fly, so there was no way they could catch up to them. However, demon beasts had reached this level of strength. Even if they didn't have the ability to fly, they still had the means to attack enemies in the air. If they really acted rashly and angered them, they might not be able to escape safely. It was a little difficult. As if sensing Lu Ye's thoughts, the head wolf suddenly howled at him. Hu Po wasn't to be outdone and responded with a tiger's roar. In the next instant, demon essence surged from the hundreds of giant wolves, and a biting cold murderous intent lingered in all directions. Lu Yi immediately felt a prickling pain on his skin and raised his hand to press down on the mountain pan saber. Just as swords were about to be drawn, giant armor suddenly raised its fan-like palm and slapped the head wolf on the head, causing it to stagger. Behave! The head wolf shook its head, and the ferocity in its eyes quickly receded. The hundreds of giant wolves also quickly went into hibernation, becoming harmless to humans and animals. Lu Yi clicked his tongue in wonder. Judging from the current situation, giant armor did indeed have an unparalleled position in the hearts of this pack of wolves. As the head wolf, it actually didn't have the slightest bit of temper after being beaten. This wasn't a reaction that demon beasts should have. Giant armor indeed didn't know the way of beast taming and had never controlled these demon wolves before. However, the help he had brought to the wolf pack during this period of time gave him the capital to control the entire pack. The lowered head wolf glanced at giant armor, then at Lu Yi, and let out a few low howls. Yi immediately said, "It's said that we can leave if we want to, but we have to bring them along. They want to follow giant armor. They'll go wherever giant armor goes." Lu Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Why were they still bargaining? Who would have thought that such a big person like giant armor would be latched onto by a group of demonic beasts? Such an encounter had probably never happened in the entire history of the Cloud River battlefield. If the beast tamers were to see this, they would be shocked to the core. However, it was obviously unrealistic to bring along such a pack of wolves. Demonic beasts were extremely valuable to cultivators. If he really brought them out of here, it would only attract a lot of trouble. But since they had already said that, if they did not take the wolves with them, they would definitely not let giant armor leave. Following giant armor was already the biggest concession they could make. If he really tried to force his way out, the pack of wolves wouldn't attack giant armor. They would only attack him. Although the alpha wolf looked obedient and docile in front of giant armor, It was only limited to giant armor. Lu Yi frowned. Things had become difficult. Leave the giant armor behind? With the protection of such a pack of wolves, giant armor would not be in too much danger normally. It could also be like a fish in water in Mount Taimong. However, the strange phenomenon caused by giant armor's cultivation was a problem. Previously, it had already attracted so many cultivators to investigate. There was even a large group of demonic beasts surrounding it. Although it had passed so many days peacefully, there was no guarantee that an accident would happen at any time. As his thoughts fluctuated, Lu Yi suddenly realized a problem. The reason he wanted to take giant armor away was to meet up with fourth senior brother and Feng Yuechan. Then, he would find a suitable place to set up a spiritual land. Fourth senior brother and the others were in charge of choosing a spiritual land. A few days had passed, and there had been no news from them. It was obvious that they were still searching. It was not easy to find a suitable place. First, there had to be a certain degree of concealment. Secondly, there had to be enough geographical advantage. Mount Taimong seemed to be a good choice. This was a naturally dangerous place. Powerful demonic beasts gathered here. Although many cultivators came here to hunt demonic beasts, they would never go too deep. Therefore, as long as the location was chosen deep enough, the spiritual land could reduce the risk of being discovered by cultivators. Since this pack of wolves had to follow giant armor, it meant that they were the natural guards of the spiritual land. With such a huge force, even if they went deeper into Mount Taimong, they would have enough power to protect themselves and deal with most dangers. Therefore, there was no need to take giant armor away. Placing the spiritual land in the depths of Mount Taimong seemed to be a better choice. Thinking of this, Lu Ye's heart suddenly became clear. He felt like he had seen the light at the end of the tunnel. Looking up, those calf-sized wolves also became much more pleasing to the eye. Of course, the premise of all this was that the wolves were loyal enough to giant armor. If they were not loyal enough, no one would feel safe surrounded by such a pack of wolves. However, judging from the current situation, there was no problem with the wolves' loyalty to giant armor. After all, they still needed to rely on giant armor's cultivation to increase the strength of the pack. Hupu, let it bring us to a quiet and safe place. Hupu growled at the alpha wolf. The alpha wolf responded from time to time, then raised its head to look at Lu Yi. Its wolf eyes were filled with a human-like expression. After a short while, the alpha wolf turned around, lowered its head, and pushed giant armor, who was standing beside it, onto its back. With vigorous steps, it rushed into the depths of the forest. Over 100 wolves followed closely behind. Lu Yi also flipped onto the tiger's back. With a few quick steps, Hupa scuttled to the alpha wolf's side, running side by side with it. Galloping all the way, they continued to go deeper into Mount Taimong. Lu Yi took out a map to compare. Their current location could already be considered as a relatively deep location within the Taimang Mountains. Generally speaking, the demonic beasts that roamed about in this location would not be too weak. Normally, if a cultivator were to pass by this place, it would definitely not be safe. Who knows when a hidden demonic beast would attack? However, wherever the wolf pack passed, not a single monster dared to provoke them. Lu Yi even saw a monster with a vigorous aura far away from the place where the wolf pack must pass. Only after the wolf pack left did the monster roar a few times symbolically, as if venting its dissatisfaction with the wolf pack trespassing into its territory. More than half a day later, the wolf pack stopped in a valley. The valley's scenery was picturesque. Colorful flowers vied with each other, and birds chirped and insects chirped. The area of the valley was very large. It was surrounded by mountains on 3 sides, and one of the sides was against a cliff. From the top of the cliff there was a waterfall, and the rumbling sound of the waterfall could be heard. Looking up, the splashing water reflected a rainbow-colored glow under the sunlight. There was a river under the waterfall, and there were many wild beasts drinking water beside the river. So beautiful! Standing on Hupo's head, Yi looked at the waterfall and the rainbow in a daze. There were very few people who knew that within this dangerous Tai Mang mountain, there was actually such a paradise. Lu Yi checked the map carefully. The map marked this place as Huitian Valley. He flew around the valley on his magic tool, but didn't see any traces of monsters. It was a good place. Not only was the scenery beautiful, the environment was pleasant, and there was a natural barrier. If giant armor cultivated again in the future, even if some strange phenomena occurred, it would be easily covered by the barrier around the valley, so it wouldn't cause such a big commotion. Lu Yi, Yi cheered. Let's choose the spiritual land here, okay? She obviously had the same idea. Lu Yi nodded. I'll send a message to fourth senior brother. He raised his hand and tapped on the battlefield imprint, sending a message. Fourth senior brother, do you have any news about the spiritual land? Li Baxian quickly replied, Don't worry, little junior brother. I'm looking for it. I have a suitable place here. Oh? You found it, little junior brother? Where is it? Mount Taimong, Huitian Valley. After waiting for a while, Li Baxian didn't reply. He was probably checking his map and comparing it with the specific location of Huitian Valley. After a while, Li Baxian replied, Little junior brother, this location is too deep into the Taimong Mountains. That place is not safe. If we really place the spiritual land there, we can reduce the risk of being discovered, but the demonic beasts there are not to be trifled with. The situation is a bit complicated. Senior brother and senior sister Feng, come meet me first. You'll know when the time comes. Okay. Li Baxian didn't ask too much. Lu Yi called him to meet up, so he immediately set off with Feng Yuechan. After ending the message, Yi asked, What did fourth senior brother say? They're on their way here. It'll take a few days. Let's use these few days to familiarize ourselves with this place, and scout the surroundings to see if it's suitable to put the spiritual land here. Okay. Having made his decision, Lu Yi immediately took action. Although he had circled around the valley and found nothing special, he still needed to be more cautious. After all, some demonic beasts were naturally good at hiding. This kind of innate ability was even better than the ghost cultivator's art of concealment. Giant Armor also checked the surroundings. It was worth mentioning that wherever he went, the wolf pack followed, especially the alpha wolf. Its eyes never left Giant Armor, as if it was afraid that he would run away. After half a day, Lu Yi had clearly checked the surrounding 100 miles and confirmed that there was indeed no danger here. Other than some wild beasts, there were no traces of other powerful monsters. Night fell, and the full moon hung in the sky. The wolf pack gathered around Giant Armor, staring at him with eager eyes, obviously waiting to cultivate with him. However, Giant Armor was not in the mood to cultivate. He was currently gathered around the bonfire with Lu Yi, staring at the snake meat that was sizzling over the bonfire and swallowing his saliva. Ever since he separated from Lu Yi, he had been living in the open. Especially in the past 2 months, he had been in a state of silence and hadn't had a full stomach for a long time. Hu Po was also at the side, eating the raw meat in large mouthfuls. A large piece of snake meat quickly entered his stomach, but he was still not satisfied. He ran over to Lu Yi and nudged him with his head. Lu Yi then took out another piece of snake meat. Soon, the snake meat was cooked. Lu Yi and Giant Armor ate it separately. Although the two of them were very different in size, there wasn't much of a difference in the way they ate. Even the snake bones crunched as they swallowed the meat whole. Chapter 558. After eating and drinking his fill, Lu Yi took out some materials from his storage space and activated his spirit energy to refine formation flags. In the hunting ground, there were not many formation flags left that he could use. If he wanted to set up a spirit land here later, he would definitely need a large number of formation flags. It was better to be prepared first. At first, Giant Armor just sat quietly at the side, savoring the taste of the snake meat. However, as time passed, he slowly closed his eyes and entered a deep state of silence. His breathing was not obvious. Even his vitality and aura were restrained to the extreme, as if he was a living dead. A milky white glow appeared on his tall and burly figure, causing the moonlight to pour down. In an instant, half of the valley was bathed in the hazy and majestic moonlight. The wolves gathered around Giant Armor raised their heads together, greedily devouring the moonlight that fell from the sky. Even Hoopa squatted on Giant Armor's head, assuming the same posture as the wolves. Lu Yi stopped what he was doing and watched silently. He did not know why Giant Armor could cause such a phenomenon when he cultivated. The only thing he could be sure of was that such a phenomenon was extremely beneficial to demon beasts. Otherwise, the wolves would not be so entangled with Giant Armor. Hoopa had cultivated with Giant Armor like this before, and it was indeed beneficial. It was rumored that demon beasts had the ability to absorb the essence of the sun and moon to cultivate. However, ordinary demon beasts would not cause such a huge commotion when cultivating like this. Only Giant Armor was different. After thinking about it, Lu Yi gathered his thoughts and tried cultivating. However, he soon gave up helplessly because there did not seem to be any special effects. Bathing in the moonlight made one feel warm, but it did not increase one's strength. It was the same for Yi. In the end, he came to the conclusion that such a cultivation method was only suitable for demon beasts. Giant Armor was undoubtedly an exception. After instructing Yi, Lu Yi stood up and summoned the spirit boat to soar into the sky. He wanted to see how large the range of the phenomenon caused by Giant Armor's cultivation was. Although the valley was surrounded by mountains on three sides and could conceal the transmission of the phenomenon to a large extent, if the phenomenon caused too much of a commotion, there was still the risk of being exposed. At that time, the demon beasts in Mount Taimong would definitely gather and cause a lot of trouble. If cultivators were to be attracted, then this place would not be suitable for a spirit land. After patrolling, he found that the situation was still okay. Most of the anomalies were concealed by the valley. Unless one was close enough, it would not be easy to discover them. When he returned, he would set up a concealment formation for the Giant Armor, and there shouldn't be too much of a problem. Returning to his original place, Lu Yi continued to refine array flags. At daybreak, he moved together with the Giant Armor to build a residence. Since they had already decided to set up a spiritual land here, living quarters were naturally essential. Even if cultivators didn't have high requirements for living conditions, they still needed a place to shelter themselves from the element. It was not difficult to build a few wooden houses. A few days passed in the blink of an eye, and a few small wooden huts appeared in the picturesque valley. In terms of formations, Lu Yi had only set up a concealment formation for Giant Armor to conceal the phenomenon when he cultivated at night. He had not set up anything else yet. Everything would have to wait for Li Baxian and the others to arrive and confirm the location of the spiritual land. On this day, Lu Yi was refining array flags when he suddenly sensed something and raised his head to look in a certain direction, only to see two streams of light rushing towards him. Lu Yi focused his vision and saw the figure in the flowing light. He stood up to welcome him. Li Baxian and Feng Yuchan had arrived. Seeing Lu Ye's figure, the two immediately flew over. Soon, they met and Lu Yi saluted, fourth senior brother, senior sister Feng. Li Baxian and Feng Yuchan looked travel-worn and seemed to be in a sorry state. Although the two were now fifth-order Cloud River Realm cultivators, they still encountered some twists and turns along the way. There were too many monster beasts in Taimang Mountains, so no matter where they came from, there was always trouble. If it weren't for the many treasures on Feng Yuchan, it would have been impossible for the two of them to come this far with their cultivation. Even so, the two of them were almost targeted by a powerful monster beast and only managed to escape with great difficulty. At this moment, seeing Lu Yi, Li Baxian finally breathed a sigh of relief. Little junior brother, this place is really not easy to come to. However, it was precisely because it was not easy to come that it was well hidden. Feng Yuchan was already attracted by the picturesque scenery. Looking around after seeing the many huge monster wolves scattered around, her expression couldn't help but turn cold. She tugged at Li Baxian's clothes and pointed to the front. "Senior brother, look." Li Baxian raised his eyes and swept his gaze over. His expression also changed slightly as he looked at Lu Yi in surprise. "What's going on?" With so many monster wolves gathered here, it was obviously a pack of wolves. What puzzled him was that his little junior brother seemed to be getting along with this pack of wolves. "It's a long story." Lu Yi beckoned Giant Armor over and introduced them to each other. Giant Armor saluted sullenly, greeting Li Baxian and Feng Yuchan. Feng Yuchan raised her head and looked at Giant Armor, who was 2 or 3 heads taller than her. Even though she had seen many body cultivators with strong physiques, she couldn't help but think of one word: innate talent. Giant Armor's body alone gave off an extremely strong sense of oppression. It was hard to imagine what kind of terrifying power this tower-like body contained. Li Baxian had seen Giant Armor from afar before, but they had never met face to face. At that time, Giant Armor's cultivation was much lower than his. Seeing him again now, the impression was completely different. Even without fighting, Li Baxian could tell at a glance that this junior brother Giant Armor was not so easy to deal with. The wolf pack was brought here by Giant Armor. When Giant Armor cultivates, there will be some strange phenomena that will be very helpful to the wolf pack. So, the wolf pack treats Giant Armor as their sacred object. They can be considered to be attached to Giant Armor, Lu Yi explained simply. Attached. Li Baxian clicked his tongue in wonder and suddenly reacted. "This is the somewhat complicated situation you mentioned before?" Lu Yi nodded. Li Baxian didn't know what to say. This situation was more than just somewhat complicated. It was simply unheard of. It was hard to imagine that such a pack of wolves would choose to attach themselves to a cultivator. "Is it reliable?" Li Baxian asked. "For the time being, it's still reliable. The wolf pack hasn't shown any hostility to me in the past few days. They just want to cultivate with Giant Armor." "What's this strange phenomenon? Why can such a pack of wolves follow junior brother Giant Armor?" "Well, you'll know at night. In short, it's a strange phenomenon that is very attractive to monster beasts. Previously, many cultivators saw this phenomenon and thought that it was the birth of a strange treasure, causing quite a commotion." Li Baxian suppressed the doubts in his heart and nodded slightly. He then turned his head to look at the surroundings and said, "This place is deep in the Great Mang Mountains. The terrain is excellent, the scenery is good, and there's a natural barrier. If this pack of wolves is reliable enough, it's indeed suitable for a spiritual land. Little junior brother has good eyes." Lu Yi shook his head. "The wolf pack led me to this place." He raised his hand and pointed at the largest monster wolf. "That's their head wolf. Usually, I communicate with it when I have something to do." Li Baxian looked in the direction Lu Yi pointed and saw the wolf looking over. There was a look of curiosity in its eyes, as if it couldn't understand why there were 2 humans here. However, in the head wolf's mind, as long as the tribe's sacred artifact wasn't taken away, no matter how many humans came, it wouldn't be a problem. So, the head wolf only looked at them for a moment before lowering its body and ignoring them. "Senior brother thinks this place is suitable for a spiritual land?" Lu Yi asked. "If the wolf pack is reliable, then it's suitable," Li Baxian replied. "If a spiritual land was placed here, the only problem would be that monster beasts would come to cause trouble, and the monster beasts that appeared in such a place would certainly not be weak. If the wolf pack was reliable, then it would be a natural barrier, and not many monster beasts would dare to come here. I want to know, what is the strength of that wolf? What is the strength of this pack of wolves?" Li Baxian asked cautiously. "I've been observing over the past few days. The head wolf has the strength of a Cloud River 9th order. The strength of the wolf pack is mixed, with some 8th or 9th order and some 1st or 2nd order. Most of them are above the 5th order, and only about 30% are below the fifth order. Lu Yi replied, I know what you're worried about, senior brother. I've considered this problem before, but according to my observations over the past few days, the wolves have no other intentions other than showing a strong reliance on cultivating with giant beetle. What about junior brother giant armor? Li Baxian asked again. Giant armor is a fourth order. His cultivation was the same as Lu Ye's. He entered the Cloud River battlefield a few months earlier than Lu Yi, but when giant armor broke through to the Cloud River realm, the power of the monster core in his body had not been completely exhausted, so after breaking through, his cultivation had already reached a certain level. The reason Lu Ye's cultivation could progress so quickly was because he had obtained many spirit sticks, but giant armor was different. His cultivation had improved through bitter cultivation in a state of silence. As early as in the Spirit Stream battlefield, Lu Yi discovered that giant armor was a person who could endure loneliness. On weekdays, besides cultivating, his greatest joy was eating with Lu Yi. Other than that, there was nothing else that could arouse his interest. Lu Yi had seen so many people, but none of them lived a more pure life than giant armor. It was precisely because of this purity that even if he only cultivated bitterly, the speed of his cultivation was extremely fast. Not to mention, giant armor's cultivation method was more unique than anyone else's. Senior brother thinks that giant armor's strength is not enough to suppress the wolf pack? Lu Yi saw Li Baxian's concern. Li Baxian nodded. Monster beasts are monster beasts after all. Without enough strength, it will be difficult to subdue them. It was natural for him to have such worries. If one day the wolf pack suddenly rioted and attacked them, none of them would be able to escape unscathed. But there was no way to guarantee this. While the two were talking, Giant Armor, who was standing to the side in boredom, suddenly raised his head and let out a strange sound towards the alpha wolf. The sound was low and deep, like a wolf's howl, but not quite. The alpha wolf crouching there immediately got up and ran over to Giant Armor in a few steps, looking at him inquiringly. Giant Armor raised his hand and patted it a few times on the head, making a few banging sounds. Lu Yi and Li Baxian's eyelids twitched. To be continued. Chapter 559. The alpha wolf was 3 times bigger than Giant Armor. Even if it didn't show any ferocity, just by standing there, its 9th order Cloud River realm cultivation was enough to make any cultivator feel uneasy. But such a majestic and powerful monster beast was being slapped on the head by Giant Armor at this moment. Just from the sound, it was obvious that the force of the slaps wasn't light. After a few slaps, Giant Armor waved his hand. The alpha wolf shook its head and silently walked back to its original place, lying down again as if nothing had happened. Li Baxian's eyes twitched. Little junior brother, I have no problems. Let's place the spirit land here. Lu Yi nodded. I think so too. All kinds of worries were resolved. Giant Armor had treated the alpha wolf like this, but the alpha wolf didn't show any bestial nature. Obviously, it didn't have any malicious intentions towards them. The location of the spirit land was thus decided. Several wooden houses had been built, and the spring spirit naturally had to be placed in the middle of these houses so that everyone could enjoy the rain and dew. Lu Yi led Li Baxian and the others to a suitable place, took out his spirit beast bag, and took out the white and fat grade A spring spirit from it. Senior brother, what should we do? Lu Yi looked up at Li Baxian. He only knew that using this grade A spring spirit could create a grade A spirit land, but Lu Yi didn't know if there were any specific details. Just put it down, Li Baxian replied. Lu Yi put the spring spirit on the ground in front of him. Everyone's eyes were fixed on it. The white and fat spring spirit's curled body stretched out, and then it gushed into the ground, looking extremely comical. Perhaps seeing Giant Armor in a daze, a few monster wolves also came over to watch the show, but they were all slapped away by Giant Armor. The spring spirit's movements seemed clumsy, but in fact it was extremely efficient. In just a moment it had dug a hole in the ground and went all the way down. Everyone waited silently. It wasn't until about an hour later that a pool of murky spring water suddenly emerged from the hole in the ground, rising several feet into the air. It gave Hoopo, who was peeking his head out to take a look, a fright. The spring water quickly became clear and gurgled out, slowly forming a small stream on the ground. As the spring water gushed out, it was accompanied by extremely dense and pure spiritual chi of heaven and earth. Lu Yi felt it for a moment. It was indeed worthy of being called a grade A spirit spring. The heaven and earth spirit chi that came with the spring water was much richer than that of the grade C spirit lands from before. Moreover, this was only the beginning. Once the situation in the spiritual land stabilized, the heaven and earth spirit chi would only become denser. "Senior brother, there's something I don't understand," Lu Yi suddenly said. "What?" "It's said that as long as you have the spirit of the spring, you can create a spiritual land of the corresponding quality, no matter where you are. However, it's impossible for the spiritual chi of heaven and earth to appear out of thin air. Where did the spiritual chi that gushed out of the spring come from? It can't be born from the spirit of the spring." Li Baxian said, "I've thought about this before and asked a few people. In short, there are two theories. The first theory is that in the depths of the cloudy river battlefield, there is an extremely large amount of heaven and earth spiritual chi. The spirit spring opened up a spirit spring, and the spirit spring gushed out spring water. Thus, the heaven and earth spiritual chi hidden in the depths of the cloudy river battlefield was drawn out." Lu Yi pondered for a moment before shaking his head. "That's not right." "Why do you say that?" "Senior brother, if that's the case, then the heaven and earth spiritual chi hidden in the depths of the cloudy river battlefield should be fixed. However, if we use the spirit of the cloudy river battlefield here, we will obtain the spirit of the cloudy river battlefield. If we use the spirit of the cloudy river battlefield here, we will obtain the spirit of the cloudy river battlefield. There's no way to explain this." Li Baxian nodded and said, "That's true. If the spirit of the cloudy river battlefield is fixed, then no matter what quality the spirit of the cloudy river battlefield is used, the spirit of the cloudy river battlefield should be the same." "What's the second theory?" Lu Yi asked. "The spirit of the cloudy river battlefield is just a catalyst. The spirit of the cloudy river battlefield is just an external manifestation. There is no heaven and earth spiritual chi hidden in the depths of the cloudy river battlefield. In other words, when we use the spirit of the cloudy river battlefield, it's the same as opening up a channel with the spirit of the cloudy river battlefield. Thus, as long as there is a spirit of the cloudy river battlefield, no matter where it is, we can create a spirit of the cloudy river battlefield. This theory is quite novel. However, this theory can also explain many problems." Lu Yi gave it some thought. This was indeed the case. If this theory was true, then all the doubts in his mind could be explained. The spirit of the cloudy river battlefield had already been created, so the heaven and earth spiritual chi in the spirit of the cloudy river battlefield would need a few more days to stabilize. Lu Yi could use this time to lay down formations. He had refined a large number of formation flags a few days ago, and now they could be put to good use. Yi and Feng Yuechan began to decorate the wooden hut. Everyone would be living here for a very long time in the future. Living in a more comfortable environment would also make them happier. Li Baxian and Zhu Jia assisted from the side, but the two of them were soon chased out. After exasperatedly exchanging glances, Li Baxian could only find Lu Yi to help him. As for Zhu Jia, he sat down next to the spirit of the cloudy river battlefield and cultivated in peace. As night fell, the bonfires were rekindled. The bright moon hung high in the sky, and the picturesque valley was filled with laughter, and the fragrance of wine and meat drifted through the air. In the latter half of the night, Li Baxian and Feng Yuechan finally saw the phenomena of Zhu Jia's cultivation. They were momentarily stunned. Especially when he was cultivating, the entire wolf pack was resonating with him, swallowing and spitting out moonlight. The scene was extremely spectacular. Fortunately, Lu Yi had already laid down a concealment array nearby, so although the phenomena were magnificent, as long as they were not too close, they would not be noticed by outsiders or monster beasts. A few days later, Lu Yi laid down a large number of spirit arrays in the entire spirit of the Cloudy River battlefield, and the world's spiritual qi in the spirit of the Cloudy River battlefield had completely stabilized. Compared to the grade C spirit of the Cloudy River battlefield that he and Shin Little Cat had occupied before, the cultivation environment of the grade A spirit of the Cloudy River battlefield was more than 10 times better. The pure and rich world's spiritual qi had almost turned into a mist that shrouded the spirit of the Cloudy River battlefield all day long. Even if one did not actively cultivate and just lived here all year round, one's cultivation would continue to improve. Everyone deeply felt how much benefit a grade A spirit of the Cloudy River battlefield could bring to a cultivator. It was no wonder that Cloud River realm cultivators were so eager for it. With such a spirit of the Cloudy River realm, a cultivator's growth time would at least be halved. Over the past few days, Yi and Hu Pa had both broken through and reached the third-order Cloud River realm. They had been just a little bit away from breaking through before, and with the accumulation over the past few days, it was naturally enough for them to break through their own shackles. After experiencing the excitement and novelty of the first few days, the days gradually returned to normal. The life of a cultivator was like this. They had always pursued the advancement of their cultivation. Among the few of them, the one who cultivated the most diligently was undoubtedly Giant Armor. During the day, he cultivated in his room by swallowing world spiritual qi, and when there was moonlight, he would walk out of his room and cultivate outside. If there was no moonlight for a few days, he could stay in his room for a few days. Lu Yi also gave him a dragon scale. The vitality contained in the dragon scale was extremely useful for a body cultivator like Giant Armor. Li Baxian and Feng Yuchan also cherished this cultivation environment very much, and both of them were working hard to improve themselves. In contrast, Lu Yi became the most idle one. He never needed to spend too much effort on cultivation. With hundreds of small spirit-gathering funnels supporting his body, as long as he was in the spirit of the Cloudy River battlefield, the rich world's spiritual qi would endlessly flow into his body. From time to time, he would swallow some spirit pills, and the volume of his spirit energy river would grow steadily every day. When he cultivated, he would hold a book and study it. The books he brought out from Madame Yun, as well as the saber cultivation experience he obtained from the Wild Saber sect, were all things he read to pass the time. Perhaps it was because Lu Yi had the most free time, he had been getting along well with the wolf pack recently. A few of the demon wolves had even become familiar with him. Occasionally, when Lu Yi was reading a book, one of the demon wolves would come over and read with him. The wolf pack would leave every few days to hunt. This was the instinct of demon beasts to reproduce and survive. After becoming familiar with the demon wolves, whenever they returned from a hunt, Lu Yi would bring a little bit of demon beast meat to them. Usually, apart from reading books and cultivating his saber techniques every day, what he did the most was practice inscribing on his own body. These days, his attainments in the path of inscribing had improved, but so far, he was still limited to practicing on his own body because there was no suitable target for him to practice on. On this day, he was practicing inscribing on his own body when a big head suddenly came over and looked curiously. Lu Yi raised his head and met a pair of wolf eyes. This was one of the demon wolves he was most familiar with. There was a patch of blue hair on its forehead that looked like a blooming blue flower. Their eyes met, but Lu Yi ignored it and continued to focus on practicing inscribing. But soon, he stopped what he was doing and raised his head to look at the demon wolf in front of him. A thought flashed through his mind. This seemed to be a good target for practicing the path of inscribing? He had never considered this before, mainly because he had to have enough trust in each other to inscribe inscriptions on demon beasts. If there was not enough trust, as Lu Yi inserted the needle, it was very likely that he would be attacked by demon beasts. At that time, the gains would not make up for the losses. But now that everyone was familiar with each other, perhaps he could give it a try? Thinking of this, Lu Yi hurriedly shouted, "Hu Po!" Hu Po, who was lazily basking in the sun not far away, quickly got up and walked over, jumping onto Lu Ye's shoulder. Lu Yi raised his hand and constructed a sharp spirit inscription on his palm. In an instant, his entire palm bloomed with fine light. The demon wolf took a step back, obviously feeling the sharp aura. "Ask it if it wants this ability." Hu Po immediately understood Lu Ye's plan and immediately communicated with the demon wolf in front of him. The demon wolf looked at Lu Ye's palm from time to time, its wolf eyes clearly showing some interest. "Tell it that as long as I insert a few needles, it will have the ability to make its claws sharper." Lu Yi struck while the iron was hot. Hu Po continued to convey Lu Ye's message. As expected, the demon wolf was moved. It took 2 steps forward and lowered its head, showing a posture of allowing Lu Yi to do as he wished. Chapter 560. Lu Yi only had the idea on the spur of the moment and wanted to practice on the demon wolf. He thought that he would have to persuade it, but he didn't expect the other party to be so cooperative. But to inscribe, the corresponding materials were needed. Different inscriptions required different materials. This was an extremely strict requirement. The materials were generally a mixture of some beast blood and medicinal liquid, which required the inscription master to mix according to different proportions. Different inscription masters had different materials and proportions. Each inscription master had their own unique secret recipe. The various secret recipes in Lu Ye's hands naturally came from Madame Yun. It could be said that they were extremely good secret recipes. However, although he had collected some thunder shadow and poisonous python blood before, these two were not suitable for sharp inscriptions. At this time, it was obviously not worthwhile to run out to buy or collect. After thinking about it, Lu Yi had an idea. Since it was not easy to run out to buy or collect, he would directly invite a Tianji pillar and use it to enter the Tianji treasure house to buy. He had planned to invite a Tianji pillar before, but it was still a short time and he didn't have time to put it into action. Although it was expensive to invite a Tianji pillar, at least it was worth it. In the face of an absolutely irresistible crisis, the people of the spiritual land could use the Tianji pillar to escape back to the 9 regions. This was a life-saving thing, so no matter how expensive it was worth it. Another point was that the spiritual land was located in the depths of the Taimong Mountains, so it was inconvenient to communicate with the outside world. If there was anything to buy, for example, this time, Lu Yi could directly connect to the Tianji treasure house, so he didn't have to leave here to look for the Tianji Merchant Union. Generally, those large class of spiritual lands had their own Tianji pillar, which was convenient for the cultivators in the spiritual land to cultivate. Small spiritual lands basically didn't have the capital to invite a Tianji pillar, but there would probably be an exception today. After making up his mind, Lu Yi immediately invited a Tianji pillar. He had already invited a Tianji pillar in the hunting ground once, so the second time was naturally a lot easier. As Lu Ye's voice fell, a blue light on the back of his hand soared into the sky. Then, an object fell from the sky with great momentum, and a wave of air swept in all directions. Li Baxian and Feng Yuechan, who were cultivating in their respective rooms, were alarmed and came out to check the situation. The corner of Li Baxian's eyes twitched when he saw another divine pillar in front of Lu Yi. "Little junior brother, you invited another divine pillar?" A single cultivator in the Cloud River tier was able to summon 2 pillars of heaven's secret. Moreover, the interval between the 2 pillars was only slightly more than a month. Throughout history, this had probably never happened before. One of these things was worth 100,000 merit points. 2 of them would be 200,000 merit points. Which Cloud River tier cultivator was so wealthy? He sighed with emotion in his heart. Little junior brother was indeed filthy rich. He couldn't be compared to him. Then, he recalled that he had bought 2 body-replenishing elixirs for him, which had cost him 300,000 merit points in one go. Compared to him, his senior brother could be said to be poor and destitute. I want to buy something," Lu Yi casually explained. Then, he raised his hand and placed it on the Tianji pillar. His mind connected to the Tianji treasury. Feng Yuechan sighed with emotion. Truly, the daughter of a rich family can do as she pleases. Just for the sake of buying something from the Tianji treasury, he had directly invited a divine pillar. No one could compare to this willfulness. However, there was no way to compare this kind of thing. Although the Pill Heart sect was a second-rank sect, and they had a large number of disciples, they also had a large number of disciples. Even a prodigy like Feng Yuechan wouldn't have much of a share of the sect's resources. Most of the time, they would have to think of ways to obtain cultivation resources themselves. However, Lu Yi was different. The entire Jade Blood sect had practically been single-handedly raised by him. His status and strength as the overlord of the Spirit Stream sect had allowed him to obtain too many benefits on the battlefield of the Spirit Stream sect. The Jade Blood sect had become wealthy because of him, so no one would restrict him from using some of the sect's resources. After confirming that there were no external enemies, Li Baxian and Feng Yuechan returned to their room to continue cultivating. Lu Yi stayed in the Tianji treasury for a while, and soon bought the various materials he needed. He had spent 100,000 merit points to invite the Divine Pillar of Heaven's Secrets, and less than 1,000 merit points to buy the materials. Checking his own battle information, the number displayed in his merit points column was 83,520 merit points. He had accumulated nearly 300,000 merit points by selling various resources on the battlefield of the Spirit Stream sect. However, he had quickly spent a large amount of merit points to buy the Earth Core Fire and various other flames, as well as a spirit storage ring. After entering the Cloud River battlefield, he had even bought many demonic beast cores for Hu Pe to snack on. In the end, he only had a little more than 180,000 merit points left. This time, he had spent another 100,000 merit points. All these sacrifices were worth it in the end. With the Divine Pillar of Heaven's Secrets in the Spirit Stream sect, he would be able to enter the Spirit Stream sect at any time in the future. With various materials in hand, Lu Yi began to mix them according to Madame Yun's secret technique. This was his first time doing such a thing, so it was inevitable that he was a little unfamiliar with it. Fortunately, it wasn't complicated. In just a stick of incense's time, 3 large bottles of different colored inscriptions appeared in front of him. One was golden, one was earthy yellow, and the last one was light cyan. The demonic wolf with the blue flower on its head was still squatting beside Lu Yi. Lu Yi raised his hand and pointed at the golden bottle, saying, "This one is this one." As he spoke, a sharp inscription appeared on his hand. A faint light blossomed, revealing a sharp aura. He then pointed at the earthy yellow bottle. "This one is this one." The inscription changed, turning into a defensive inscription, revealing a thick defensive power. He then pointed at the last light cyan bottle, and "the last one is this one." The defensive inscription turned into a gust of wind, and his entire hand appeared to be light and agile. "Then, young man, which one do you want?" Regardless of whether it was sharp, defensive, or gust of wind, they were all simple and practical inscriptions that Lu Yi had obtained at the beginning. He had also practiced on himself many times. Although he didn't dare to say that he was completely confident, he still had an 80 to 90% chance of success. These 3 inscriptions weren't complicated at all. He originally only wanted to test the sharp inscription on the demonic wolf, but now that he had enough materials, he could provide it with more options. Although the demonic wolf didn't understand human language, it was undoubtedly intelligent. Lu Ye's gestures were simple, so it naturally understood. After Lu Yi finished speaking, it raised its paw and patted the golden bottle. Lu Yi nodded. Wolves were fierce by nature, so it was natural for them to pursue the ultimate attack. Since it had made a choice, Lu Yi naturally had to satisfy its request. This was his first customer, even if it was a demonic beast that couldn't speak. Lu Yi made up his mind to give it a good experience. The problem was where to inscribe the inscription. The sharp inscription was an offensive spirit inscription, so there were only two suitable places, the claws and the mouth. In the past few days, Lu Yi had also witnessed the fights between the demon wolves. Their sharp claws and fangs were their natural weapons. Just by looking at them, anyone would think that they were fighting to the death. But in fact, according to Lu Ye's observation, they were just using this method to sharpen their killing experience. The demonic wolf with a blue flower on its head in front of him was undoubtedly the weakest in the entire wolf pack. Its monster chi aura wasn't strong, only around the 4th or 5th order Cloud River realm. When fighting with other species, it would often suffer losses. Carefully sizing up the demonic wolf in front of him, Lu Yi made up his mind. He chose to inscribe the inscription on its mouth. Compared to its claws, demonic wolves relied more on their fangs. Raising his hand to pinch the wolf's mouth, Lu Yi turned to Hu Po and said, "Tell it that it will hurt a little, so tell it not to move around." Hu Po immediately growled in a low voice. A look of disdain flashed across the demonic wolf's eyes. Obviously, it didn't take Hu Po's advice to heart. Everything was ready, and Lu Ye's expression became solemn. Although he had already tried it on himself many times and had many successful experiences, it was still just practice. Strictly speaking, this was his first time inscribing a spirit inscription, so he couldn't fail. Placing the needle at a convenient place beside him, Lu Yi pinched the wolf's mouth with one hand and quickly took out a needle with the other. He dipped it into the material in the bottle and pierced it with lightning speed. At this moment, his mind was focused to the extreme. The moment the needle fell, his spirit chi surged slightly and the first foundation was formed. He pulled out the needle, changed it, dipped it in the material, and pierced it again. The moment the second foundation was formed, it perfectly merged with the first foundation. Lu Ye's movements were extremely fast, but they were methodical. As the needle fell one after the other, a small, exquisite, arrow-like golden imprint slowly took shape on the wolf's mouth. There weren't many yin and yang elements that formed the sharpness spirit inscription, only a few dozen. Therefore, in less than 30 breaths, Lu Yi was already done. When the last needle fell, the last foundation was formed, and the golden imprint that had already taken shape flashed with a trace of light. From beginning to end, the demonic wolf didn't move at all. There wasn't even any fluctuation in its eyes. It was obvious that the pain from the inscription was nothing to it. Lu Yi exhaled and released the wolf's mouth. Looking carefully, there seemed to be an additional golden tattoo on the demonic wolf's mouth. It looked very unique. This was an obvious inscription, and it wasn't permanent. It was the same type as the flying wing inscription that Lu Yi had obtained in the beginning. Lu Ye's current attainments in the Tao of inscription weren't very high. This was already his limit. When his attainments in the future gradually increased, he would be qualified to inscribe hidden or permanent inscriptions. Of course, the materials needed to inscribe those inscriptions would be different. In front of Lu Yi, the demonic wolf looked at him suspiciously because it didn't feel any special changes in itself. "Try urging your demonic chi," Lu Yi said. The demon wolf understood and immediately urged its own demon chi. In the next moment, the golden mark on its mouth flashed, making its fangs shine, adding a sharpness to them. It bared its fangs at Lu Yi, looking very majestic. Lu Yi slapped it to the side. "Go play by yourself." Now that they were familiar with each other, there was no need to be polite to it. Lu Yi was in a good mood after his first perfect inscription. To be continued. Chapter 561. In the Spirit Land, Lu Yi got up and went to the Heaven's Fate Pillar again. He connected his consciousness to the Heaven's Fate Treasury, but this time, he wasn't there to buy anything. Instead, He wanted to upgrade his mountain coiling saber. The mountain coiling saber was a mid-rank spirit artifact with 18 seals. It had just been upgraded a few months ago, from low rank to mid-rank. However, Lu Ye's cultivation had been improving rapidly recently. Since he entered the Cloud River battlefield, he had reached the 4th Order Cloud River realm in less than 5 months. Now, he was qualified enough to wield a higher quality spiritual weapon. Under normal circumstances, Spirit Stream Realm cultivators would only use low-grade spirit artifacts. Once they reached the Cloud River realm, they would be able to switch to mid-grade spirit artifact. Once they reached the Cloud River realm, they would be able to switch to high-grade spirit artifact. As for top-grade spirit artifacts, they were generally used by true Lake Realm cultivators. Although Lu Ye's cultivation was one level lower than the 5th Order Cloud River realm, it wasn't a big problem. Since he didn't have anything to do recently and didn't need to fight with anyone, he could use this free time to upgrade the grade of the mountain plate saber. Otherwise, he wouldn't have the time to do it in the future. In the Heaven's Fate Treasury, Lu Ye whispered, "Commission, upgrade spirit artifact." He had done this before, so he knew the procedure. As his voice fell, his vision changed and he appeared in a small room. The room was empty, except for a platform in front of him. Lu Ye began to wait here. On his side, he still needed a free tool refiner to accept the commission. Then, they would negotiate the price and agree on some conditions and time limit. If there was no tool refiner to accept the commission, then he could only continue to wait. For the cultivators of the 9 continents, this method was undoubtedly convenient. They didn't need to spend time and effort to find an artifact refiner. They only needed to use the Heaven's Fate Treasury to complete the task. Not only could they do this for spirit artifacts, but they could also commission custom spirit artifacts and refine spirit pills. Therefore, as long as one had a special skill, it wasn't difficult to earn merit points. Those who specialized in artifact refining and alchemy didn't even need to fight with others. They only needed to accept commissions in the Heaven's Fate Treasury to earn enough merit points to satisfy their cultivation need. There were quite a number of blacksmiths in the Tianji treasure vault. Lu Ye only waited for a moment before the space in front of him twisted and a figure appeared. Raising his eyes to size her up, he saw that the person wasn't very old, around 30 years old. Her skin was fair and tender, and she had a charming appearance. She was wearing a close-fitting floral dress that outlined her graceful curve. Lu Ye was surprised. In the Tianji treasury, Tianji had a natural concealment and protection for both parties involved in the transaction. It was a means of shrouding oneself in a fog, making it impossible for both parties to distinguish the identity and appearance of the other party. Even their gender could not be discerned. After all, the two parties involved in such a transaction were likely to be from two different camps. Concealing the identities and appearances of both parties could also reduce a lot of unnecessary trouble. However, ever since Lu Ye obtained the blessing of Heaven's secret, this kind of concealment had lost its effect on him. He seemed to have gained some privileges that did not have any effect on him. In his vision, the cultivators he traded with were not shrouded in fog at all. What made Lu Ye surprised was that the armament master who came this time was actually that woman from last time. Wasn't this too much of a coincidence? The upgrade of the mountain pan saber from low grade to mid grade was made by this woman. The result was very satisfactory to Lu Ye. Since it was her again this time, there was no problem. Lu Ye calmly placed the mountain pan saber in his hand on the table in front of him. The woman raised her hand and grabbed it. Frowning, she said in a dissatisfied voice with an old voice, "A mere mid-grade spirit weapon. Last time, she said, a mere low-grade. Obviously, the spirit weapon's quality was too low, so she didn't make much profit." However, unlike last time, before the woman finished speaking, she seemed to have discovered something. Turning the mountain pan saber over, she looked at it and her expression changed slightly. The mountain pan saber's hilt originally only had the 2 words Pan Mountain, but since the woman upgraded it last time, there was an additional symbol of a feather. It didn't affect its use. Lu Yi knew that some armament masters liked to leave some special symbols on their work to prove that it was their masterpiece. That feather was undoubtedly the special symbol left by the woman. At this moment, she saw her own symbol. She raised her head in surprise and glanced at Lu Yi, as if she hadn't expected things to be so coincidental. The spirit weapon that she had upgraded before appeared in front of her again. Thinking back, she recalled what had happened a few months ago. After all, there weren't many people who were willing to pay such a huge price to upgrade a low-grade spirit weapon. Most cultivators would just buy it directly and wouldn't waste much merit point. In just a few months it was upgraded again. How could this little guy's cultivation speed be so fast? The woman muttered to herself. Although she couldn't see Lu Ye's face, she could deduce a few things from the mountain pan saber in his hand. Upgrade it to high grade? The woman asked in her old voice. Just from her voice, one would think she was an old man, but in reality, she was a charming woman. Yes. What do you want? The shape and length remain the same, 27 restrictions, and double the weight. All right, name your price. Lu Yi pondered. Last time, upgrading the mountain pan saber from low grade to mid grade had cost him 2,000 merit points. This time, the cost would be even greater. After pondering for a moment, he said, 5,000 merit points. The woman raised an eyebrow, and a smile appeared on her face. She was clearly very satisfied with this price, mainly because she hadn't expected a little guy at the Cloud River tier to be so generous. However, she said, at least 8,000 merit points. Upgrading from mid-grade to high-grade requires a lot of materials, and I'll have to buy them. Lu Yi looked at her. If it weren't for the fact that he had the privilege of being able to see the woman's expression clearly, he would definitely feel that her words were reasonable. However, since he had already seen through the woman's expression, how could Lu Yi not know that his price of 5,000 merit points was a little too high? This woman was probably thinking that he was a sucker. Thinking about it carefully, because it was easy for him to obtain merit points, he didn't feel bad about squandering them. However, if it were any other cultivator at the Cloud River tier, they would have to think twice about spending several thousand merit points. Then forget it, I don't have that many merit points. Saying this, Lu Yi moved to retrieve the mountain pan saber. It's not that we can't negotiate, the woman hurriedly said. 4,000 merit points? What did you say? The woman's eyebrows twitched. I think I only have 4,000 merit points left. Brat, are you toying with me? The woman's expression darkened. 5,000 merit points, and you'll retrieve the saber in 3 days. If possible, sign the Heaven's secret contract. Okay. Lu Yi agreed somewhat reluctantly. He secretly decided that the next time he wanted to upgrade the mountain pan saber, he would let others name the price, and then he would observe the situation and slowly haggle. The woman immediately took out the Heaven's secret contract and listed down some terms. Lu Yi checked, and after confirming that there were no mistakes, both parties signed the contract. 3 days later, the woman said, and her figure quickly disappeared. Lu Yi stayed in the Heaven's secret treasure trove for a while, and inadvertently discovered that a few more earth core flames had appeared. He immediately spent some merit points to buy them. From the looks of it, it was just as he had thought. The items in the Tianji treasury all came from a certain source. He had already bought all of the earth core flames, and now there were a few more. There was no doubt that someone had collected the earth core flames from somewhere and sold them to the Tianji treasury. It seemed that he would have to take a look from time to time in the future. Who knew, he might be able to find something. Now that he had the Heaven's secret pillar in the spiritual land, it wouldn't take much effort to do this. Withdrawing his consciousness from the Heaven's secret treasure trove, Lu Yi turned around and raised his eyebrows. Behind him, a large group of demon wolves stood there quietly. Their eyes were fixed on him. The tallest demon wolf was just 3 feet in front of him. Although Lu Yi had become familiar with a few of the demon wolves during this time, most of them ignored him. It wasn't just him. Other than Giant Carapace, these demon wolves didn't show any signs of closeness to anyone else. This was especially true for the head wolf. This fellow was the most arrogant, and usually didn't even bother to look at Lu Yi and the others. At this moment, however, it was waiting here with a whole group of demon wolves. Beside the head wolf was the demon wolf with the sharp tattoos. To be able to stand side by side with the head wolf like this was undoubtedly an honor. In the past, it didn't have such qualifications. Moreover, it seemed to be quite proud of itself, and there were some fresh bloodstains at the corner of its mouth. This was clearly the attitude of someone who had won a fight with a companion. Lu Yi immediately understood what was going on. You guys also want that special ability? The head wolf lowered its head slightly. The meaning it wanted to express was obvious. Just a simple sharp tattoos could increase a demon wolf's biting power by at least 30 to 40%. This kind of increase naturally made all the demon wolves excited. This was also the reason why the head wolf led the pack here to wait for Lu Yi. Lu Yi was a little surprised by this situation. He originally planned to find a few other demon wolves that he was familiar with and continue to practice on them. Now, it saved him a lot of trouble. The head wolf took the initiative to find him, and the effect was naturally different from finding him himself. There were hundreds of demon wolves in the pack. If he could tattoo every demon wolf, Lu Yi would accumulate more experience and knowledge. This was something he was happy to see. After pondering for a moment, he took out a demon core from his storage space and held it in front of the head wolf. Exchange with this. The demon wolf pack would go out to hunt every few days. Not only would there be fresh meat, but there would also be some demon cores. However, these demon cores would be digested by the demon wolves themselves. Hoopa wasn't the only one who liked demon cores. All demon beasts liked to devour the demon cores of other demon beasts. This would allow them to grow faster, especially if the demon cores were compatible with each other's attribute. Lu Yi could tattoo these demon wolves with spirit tattoos for free, but it would be better if he could take advantage of this opportunity to earn some benefits. After all, he had spent merit points to buy these materials from the Tianji treasury. He also had to spend a lot of time and effort to tattoo them. Chapter 562. The alpha wolf glanced at the monster core in Lu Ye's hand and a human-like look flashed across its eyes. Then, it lowered its head slightly in agreement. Lu Yi felt very strange. He had actually reached a deal with a group of demonic beasts. Although the terms of the deal were unclear and the specific price had not been agreed upon, since the alpha wolf had agreed, he would be able to sit back and collect some demonic cores. Moreover, it would save him the trouble of personally finding a target to practice on. It was a good thing. He immediately sat down cross-legged in front of the steps of his wooden house, then took out the materials he had bought from the Tianji treasury and lined them up in a row. Just like the previous time, he displayed the different effects of the 3 spirit tattoos in front of the alpha wolf. Remember, you can choose which one you want later. I will inscribe different spirit tattoos for you. Lu Yi looked at the alpha wolf and reminded it. The alpha wolf turned around and tilted its head. Among the pack of wolves, a giant wolf immediately stepped forward and stood in front of Lu Yi. The alpha wolf raised its paw and patted the golden bottle that symbolized the sharpness spirit tattoo. Understood. Lu Yi raised his hand and grabbed the mouth of the monster wolf in front of him, then took out the needle and began to inscribe. In a moment, a sharp tattoo was formed, and a golden arrow mark appeared on the mouth of the monster wolf. The monster wolf activated its monster chi and bared its teeth. Its sharp fangs were immediately covered with a layer of light, making them look even sharper. Although there had been companions who had displayed their sharpness in battle before, seeing how this power was born with their own eyes was a completely different feeling. Lu Yi clearly saw a trace of surprise in the alpha wolf's eyes. Even the quiet pack of wolves was a little restless, looking at Lu Yi with burning eyes. This was something that had never happened before. There were hundreds of monster wolves in the pack. Usually, except for giant armor, they basically did not care about the others and treated them as if they did not exist in the spiritual land. But now, when they realized that Lu Yi had the power to make them stronger, the wolf pack's perception of Lu Yi had undoubtedly changed slightly. Moreover, this kind of strengthening was easy and did not require any price. This made the wolf pack value Lu Yi even more. Another monster wolf stepped forward under the alpha wolf signal, and the alpha wolf patted the golden bottle that symbolized the sharpness spirit tattoo as usual. Lu Yi rested for a moment before attacking again. The time he spent inscribing wasn't long, at most a few dozen breaths of time. However, this short period of time was extremely taxing on his mind. With each strike, Lu Ye's technique became more and more skillful. While he was busy on this side, outside of the Taimong Mountains, 3 streams of light were flying side by side, sweeping across the sky as fast as lightning. Judging from the spirit chi fluctuations of these 3, they were all 9th-order Cloud River Realm cultivators. Moreover, all of them were 9th-order Cloud River Realm masters who had dealt with Lu Yi before. The one in the middle was Tan Xing from the New Moon sect. The one on the left was Wei Kei from the Cloud Sun sect. The one on the right had the sharpest aura, it was Xiao Yang from the Mad Blade sect. Compared to his state in the hunting ground, Tan Xing's aura was undoubtedly more violent at this moment. His eyes were bloodshot and his whole body was thinner. New Moon Sect's station in the Spirit Stream battlefield had been destroyed, and more than 50 disciples had been killed or injured. It could be said that their losses were heavy. When Tan Xing received the news in the Cloud River battlefield that day, he almost fainted from anger. It was also at that time that he secretly vowed to kill Lu Yi and avenge his junior brothers and junior sisters. He was someone who was about to break through to the true lake realm and had some gains in the hunting ground. If he wanted to, he could break through at any time and leave the Cloud River battlefield. However, in order to kill Lu Yi, he had delayed his breakthrough. If he didn't take revenge, what qualifications did he have to break through to the true lake realm? He admitted that he was the mastermind behind the hunting ground incident, but that was not a reason for Lu Yi to target the sect behind him. The Cloud River realm incident had reached the Spirit Stream battlefield, and New Moon sect had suffered such a big loss without being able to fight back. Lu Yi was simply a beast. Therefore, no matter what, he had to kill Lu Yi in the Cloud River battlefield. Only then could he break through to the true lake realm with peace of mind. Wei Kei had the same reason as him. However, compared to New Moon sect, the Cloud Sun sect behind him had not lost many people. It was just that their station had been destroyed and they had lost a lot of merit. Wei Kei did not have as much hatred as Tan Xing. He was more concerned about the huge reward for killing Lu Yi. Since Lu Yi had robbed the myriad Devil Ridges sects in the Spirit Stream battlefield, the reward had increased by a lot. As for Xiaoliang, he was not here for Lu Yi. He was here for Li Baxian. To Xiaoliang, Yan Xing was like a brother and a father, and Yan Xing had died at Li Baxian's hands. When he first learned that Li Baxian had entered the Cloud River battlefield, he had been searching for traces of him. Unfortunately, the Cloud River battlefield was too big. Trying to find a person in such a place was like finding a needle in a haystack. However, Lu Yi and Li Baxian had a close relationship. If he could capture Lu Yi, Li Baxian would not sit idly by. Back in the hunting field, Xiaoliang had taken action against Lu Yi partly because of this. In this vast sea of people, it was naturally not a coincidence that these 3 people had gathered together, but rather an operation led by Tan Xing to target Lu Yi. Both Wei Kei and Xiaoliang had been invited by him. He had not invited more people because 3 9th-order cultivators were more than enough to deal with Lu Yi. Last time, even if they had more people, Lu Yi still managed to escape in the end. Moreover, the reason Lu Yi was able to escape last time was because of the golden body token. With that thing protecting him, no one could break through his defense. However, it was impossible for Lu Ye to have a second golden body token, so as long as they could find his whereabouts, they could definitely kill him. As they flew, Wei Ke asked, "Brother Tan, are you certain that Lu Ye entered Grand Mang Mountain?" Tan Xing did not speak, instead taking out a compass-like object from his sleeve and examining it carefully before replying, "I'm certain." The compass-like object looked similar to a tracking disc, but in fact, its effect was far inferior. A tracking disc could clearly guide the location of the person being tracked, giving an extremely clear direction, and the closer the distance, the stronger the response of the tracking disc. However, the compass-like spirit artifact in Tan Xing's hand could not. It could only give a general direction. Strictly speaking, this object was a severely weakened version of a tracking disc. But even so, the value of this object was extremely high, and it was a rare object even in the entire 9 provinces. New Moon Sect had paid a huge price to buy it from Heavenly Secret Commerce Union, and then had a disciple deliver it to Tan Xing in the Cloud River battlefield. This object was used to find traces of Lu Yi and avenge the destruction of their sect's encampment and the death of their disciple. So, even if it was just a severely weakened version of a tracking disc, it had no problem giving a general direction. The 3 of them followed the directions of this compass-like object and rushed all the way to Grand Mang Mountain. Lu Ye is only a 3rd-order cultivator, even if he obtained the reward from the hunting list. Even if he is a 4th-order cultivator, entering Grand Mang Mountain was not a wise choice. What is he doing here? Experience, cultivation, there is always a reason. Tan Xing replied casually. And don't forget, the reward for first place on the hunting list is a Grade A Spring Spirit. Wei Ke's expression changed when he heard this. Brother Tan means. Tan Xing coldly snorted. A Grade A Spirit land is extremely precious. Even if Lu Ye obtained a Grade A Spring Spirit, he wouldn't dare to casually place it there. If he wants to place the Grade A Spring Spirit, he would have to find a hidden place. Grand Mang Mountain is undoubtedly a good choice. Although it is very risky here, as long as he is lucky, he might be able to find a suitable place to reduce the risk of others discovering his spirit land. Wei Ke's eyes lit up when he heard this. That makes sense. If it was to place a Grade A Spring Spirit in Grand Mang Mountain, then it made sense. If that was the case, as long as they succeeded this time, not only would they obtain a large bounty, they would also obtain a Grade A Spring Spirit. However, compared to the bounty on Myriad Demon Ridge, the temptation of a Grade A Spring Spirit paled in comparison. At least it was a bonus. There is also Brother Xiaoliang. If there is no accident, Li Baxian might be by Lu Ye's side. Tan Xing said something shocking. Xiaoliang, who had been silent all this time, suddenly had a sharp look in his eyes. What do you mean? There are very few Cloud River Realm cultivators in the Jade Blood Sect now, so Lu Ye can't monopolize a Grade A Spirit land. I'm sure you know Li Baxian's situation in Pill Heart Sect. Pill Heart Sect has its own spirit land, but how could Li Baxian have the opportunity to cultivate there? Since Lu Ye has a Grade A spirit land, do you think he will invite Li Baxian to move in with him? Xiao Yang's eyes brightened. If that's the case, then it will be interesting. The sound of a saber suddenly rang out, and a bright saber light flashed past. Xiao Yang had already shot forward like an arrow leaving the bowstring. A huge bird charged straight at him, and when the 2 figures, one big and one small, passed by each other, a rain of blood filled the sky. A powerful bird comparable to a 7th-order Cloud River Realm cultivator was killed by Xiaoliang with a single slash. Wei Ke looked on enviously. Although they were both at the 9th-order Cloud River Realm, Wei Ke's 9th-order cultivation was completely incomparable to Xiaoliang's, and he was even inferior to Tan Xing's. The main reason for this was that his foundation in the Spirit Stream realm was not solid enough. Even though the 3 of them had broken through to the Cloud River realm with 360 apertures, whether it was Tan Xing or Xiaoliang, both of them were ranked on the Spirit Stream list. Only Wei Ke had never been ranked on the Spirit Stream list. Xiaoyang was full of fighting spirit, Tan Xing was eager for revenge, and Wei Kei was thinking about the bounty. On this day, the 3 Ninth Order cultivators found their way deep into Tai Mang Mountain. In the Spirit Land, Lu Yi pierced nearly 30 monster wolves before waving his hand to the Alpha Wolf. "We'll come back tomorrow." He had used up too much of his mental energy, and needed to rest well to recover. Moreover, not all of the spirit runes he pierced were sharp spirit runes. Some of them were defensive spirit runes and wind travel spirit runes. What kind of spirit inscription was up to the Alpha Wolf to choose, and Lu Yi concluded that above the 5th Order spirit inscription, excluding the 5th Order spirit inscription, was the sharp spirit inscription, while below it was either the defensive spirit inscription or the wind spirit inscription. Defensive spirit runes were located on the wolf's abdomen, while wind travel spirit runes were located on the wolf's legs. The Alpha Wolf's choice was undoubtedly to allow the weaker monster wolves in the pack to have enough strength to protect themselves. Chapter 563. Every day, other than helping the demon wolves inscribe different spirit tattoos, Lu Yi spent the rest of his time cultivating and reading books. Now that the spirit energy of heaven and earth in the spiritual land had completely stabilized, the cultivation environment was excellent. Coupled with the consumption of the Origin Spirit Pill, Lu Ye's cultivation efficiency could be said to have reached an all-time high. Of course, even so, there was no way it could compare to cultivating with using spirit sticks. For cultivators, using spirit sticks to cultivate would always be the fastest way to increase their cultivation. In the blink of an eye, 3 days later, all the demon wolves had received different tattoos. In these 3 days, Lu Yi had also obtained more than 10 demon cores from the demon wolves. They were all brought back by the wolf pack when they went out to hunt. The quality of the demon cores varied, but overall, they were not bad. When the last demon wolf was inscribed, the entire wolf pack suddenly gathered together. The tall figure of the Alpha Wolf was extremely conspicuous among the wolf pack. It howled at the sky, and the wolf pack howled in response. Immediately after, the Alpha Wolf turned around and led its wolf pack out of Huitian Valley. Lu Yi was curious, not knowing what the wolf pack was going to do. Recently, although the wolf pack had gone out to hunt, they had never all gone out. At most, a group of demon wolves would be in charge of hunting, and most of them would stay in the valley. It was the first time that all of them had left like today. Moreover, looking at the way the wolf pack left, it felt like an army was going to war. Are they going to find some demon beast for revenge? Lu Yi thought to himself. Although the overall strength of such a wolf pack was strong, it did not mean that there were no enemies in Taimong Mountain. They might have suffered under some enemy in the past, so they used the cultivation of the giant armor to increase the strength of the pack. Now, with Lu Yi inscribing spirit tattoos, their overall strength did not increase by much, but it was at least 20 to 30%. This gave them the confidence to take revenge. Of course, Lu Yi was not sure if that was the case. At night, the wolf pack still did not return. Lu Yi roasted the snake meat and ate some casually. He got up and went to the Tianji pillar. He raised his hand and pressed it, connecting to the Tianji treasure vault. Soon, he appeared in the small room dedicated to the promotion of spirit weapons. It was time to meet the woman. What puzzled him was that after waiting for more than 2 hours, there was still no sign of the other party. Lu Yi was not worried that the other party would be greedy for his mountain pan saber. They had already signed the Heaven's Fate contract. If the other party did not deliver the mountain pan saber in time, he would definitely be punished by the Heaven's Fate. Even if the other party was a true lake stage cultivator or even a spirit sea stage cultivator, he would not be able to withstand the punishment. Therefore, as long as the other party was still alive, they would deliver the mountain plate saber to him no matter what. But if Lu Yi died, then things would become troublesome. The mountain pan Dao had been with Lu Yi for many years, and had long since become one with the Dao. Even if he were to find an identical Dao, it would still affect his strength. It couldn't be such a coincidence that the other party was really dead, right? Time passed bit by bit. Seeing that the time limit was about to end, the space in front of Lu Yi suddenly distorted and the woman's figure appeared. Lu Yi looked up and saw that the other party's face was pale and there were traces of blood at the corner of her mouth. Clearly, she had just fought with someone and was injured. Seeing that Lu Yi was waiting here, the woman let out a long breath and her chest rose high. Then, she placed the mountain plate saber on the table in front of her and continued to bewitch Lu Yi with her old voice. Fortunately, I did not disappoint you. Check it. Lu Yi picked up the mountain plate saber and casually weighed it in his hand. He found that it was indeed twice as heavy as before and felt just right. Unsheathing the saber, the originally pitch-black blade appeared even more profound, but there was also a sense of sharpness in the darkness. Using his mind, he checked the various restrictions on the saber. There were indeed 27 restrictions. All the requirements were met. As for how much the mountain plate saber's power increased, that would have to be tested in battle. However, since the Pan Mountain Saber was upgraded from a low-grade saber to a middle-grade saber, there shouldn't be any problems upgrading it from a middle-grade saber to a high-grade saber. Since they had worked together before, Lu Yi was quite confident in this woman's skills. No problem. Lu Yi nodded in confirmation. Just as he finished speaking, the heavenly fate contract took effect. There was a slight heat on the back of his hand, and the agreed contribution points were deducted. Since the deal was done, there was no need to stay any longer. Lu Yi didn't want to know how she was injured, and there was no need to ask, lest he expose some of his secrets. Just as he was about to leave, the woman suddenly shouted, "Young friend, please wait." Lu Yi looked up at her. "Young friend, you're at the Cloud River tier, right?" "Yes." With the mountain plate saber's grade, the woman could easily guess this. "Young friend, you should be able to upgrade this saber to top grade in the future, right?" "Possibly." "Then why don't you leave this old man's mark? If you need it again, you can directly send a message to this old man. This will save you a lot of trouble." The woman's suggestion was somewhat out of Lu Ye's expectations. However, looking at her expression, it seemed that she still wanted to earn some money from him. This was understandable. In any case, if he wanted to upgrade the saber in the future, he would have to come here again. If there were people he knew, it would save him some trouble. Sure. The woman immediately raised her hand and touched her battlefield mark. A dot of light floated toward Lu Yi. Lu Yi raised his hand and the light landed on the battlefield mark on the back of his hand. "How should I address you?" Lu Yi asked. "Call me Master Yu," the woman replied. "However, if you want to find me, you have to leave the Cloud River battlefield. You won't be able to contact me from the Cloud River battlefield." The woman's cultivation was undoubtedly higher than the Cloud River tier. She was really somewhere in the 9 prefectures. Understood. Lu Yi nodded slightly. With a thought, his figure disappeared and he left this place. The woman frowned. He didn't even say his name. What an ignorant brat. She cursed in her heart and hurriedly left. She had injuries on her body, and she had to quickly heal them. In the spiritual land's wooden house, Lu Yi checked the Pan Mountain Saber and channeled his spiritual power into it. Compared to before, it seemed to be smoother. Moreover, after such a long time, Lu Yi had fought with others with the saber. There were more or less some small marks on the saber. No matter how strong the Pan Mountain Saber was, this was unavoidable. However, after upgrading the saber, these small marks that originally existed had disappeared. The saber seemed to have been reborn. Not to mention the woman's pretentious character, this weapon refining skill was very good. In fact, if Lu Yi was willing, he could also cultivate the art of weapon refining. He had the foundation of a spirit tattooist, so cultivating the art of weapon refining would be twice the result with half the effort. However, a person's energy was always limited. In addition to his main focus as a spirit tattooist, he had also cultivated the art of array formation and the art of inscription. He couldn't spare any more energy. He took out the breath fruit core from the storage space and prepared to enter the mirage to test it. His mind was immersed in it. Soon, he appeared in that unique small space. Lu Yi immediately looked around vigilantly. Since the last time he entered here and was killed by an inexplicable guy, Lu Yi had been vigilant every time he entered the mirage with the help of the breath fruit core. However, after such a long time, he hadn't met the other party again. First of all, the number of times they entered the mirage might not be many. After all, each time they entered the mirage, it would cost some merit points. Second, this small space was just a transit place. As long as they didn't enter this place at the same time, they wouldn't meet. It was too much of a coincidence that he met the other person here last time. After spending 100 merit points, Lu Yi opened the door and walked into the mirage, standing with his saber. The surrounding fog rolled, and soon a figure wrapped in fog rushed out. Before the person arrived, a stream of light from a flying artifact had already attacked. This time, the opponent he met in the mirage was a cultivator. Judging from the power of the other party's attack, he was a fourth-order Cloud River Realm cultivator, the same as Lu Yi. The strength of the opponent in the mirage was always linked to Lu Ye's own strength. He entered here as a fourth-order Cloud River Realm cultivator, so his opponent was a fourth-order cultivator. The difficulty would increase little by little until he couldn't bear it and was finally killed. Although they were both fourth-order cultivators, Lu Yi had long been accustomed to killing enemies above his realm. Facing the many streams of light attacking him, he met them head-on. The mountain-coiling saber ignited with flames and blocked all the attacks. He rushed straight to the enemy and slashed his saber, causing the enemy's figure to collapse. The surrounding fog rolled, and this time, two figures rushed out. Lu Ye's long saber danced in the air. Saber light swept across the sky. Lu Ye's figure moved in the mirage. The Pan Mountain saber was burning with dazzling flames. One enemy after another fell. After being upgraded to high rank, the mountain coiling saber's lethality had undoubtedly increased, but correspondingly, the consumption of spirit energy had also become more intense. This was inevitable. It was also the reason why cultivators with different cultivation levels could use different quality spirit artifact. If a spirit stream realm cultivator used a high-rank spirit artifact, even if they could use it, they wouldn't be able to last long. Soon, their spirit energy would be exhausted. Lu Yi was now a fourth-order cultivator, so he could barely use the consumption of spirit energy from a high-rank spirit artifact. If he could raise his cultivation to the fifth order, it would be easier for him to use it. Originally, he was still considering whether to replace the Imperial artifact in his artifact box with a high-rank spirit artifact, but after this test, he thought about it and gave up. It wasn't that he couldn't afford it, but that it wasn't necessary. The main way armament cultivators killed their enemies was through close combat. The way of artifact manipulation was just a decoration. It allowed armament cultivators to have a medium to long-range combat method to avoid the awkward situation of being attacked from a distance without being able to fight back. However, compared to the Imperial artifacts of other armament cultivators, Lu Ye's Imperial artifact was undoubtedly more lethal because he could enchant his Imperial artifact with spirit inscriptions. Wind travel could make his Imperial artifact faster, and sharpness could make his Imperial artifact more lethal. This was something most cultivators couldn't compare with. More than half an hour later, Lu Yi was killed out of the mirage. A slight tingling sensation in his mind quickly disappeared. This was undoubtedly the benefit of his powerful soul. To be continued. Chapter 564. Every day he would read books and cultivate. He would also take some time to temper himself in the Mirage realm and familiarize himself with the power of the upgraded Pan Mountain Saber. His days passed peacefully. This kind of life was what many cultivators at the Cloud River tier yearned for. With a stable environment for cultivation, they wouldn't have to travel around tirelessly. Naturally, they wouldn't encounter too many dangers and could steadily improve their cultivation. Lu Yi was also willing to endure hardship. Although he had been constantly on the move since he started cultivating, who would refuse such a peaceful life unless he had no other choice. Although cultivating in the spirit land couldn't compare to obtaining spirit sticks, it was more stable. Overall, it was more efficient than searching for spirit sticks to improve one's cultivation. After all, spirit sticks weren't things that could be obtained just because one wanted them. It depended on one's luck. In the evening 3 days after the wolf pack disappeared, the sun was setting in the west. Lu Yi, who was reading a book and cultivating, suddenly looked up and saw a dense pack of figures outside the spirit land formation. The wolf pack had returned. The majestic alpha wolf was covered in blood, and the other wolves were also injured. It seemed that they had been through a great battle. However, what surprised Lu Yi was that the wolf pack had increased in number. Originally, this wolf pack only had 100 wolves, but this time, more than 200 had returned. Moreover, there were clearly some wolf pups among them. Under the lead of the alpha wolf, the wolf pack stopped outside the spirit land formation and waited quietly. Lu Yi waved the formation flag and opened a gap in the spirit land. Only then did the wolf pack rush into the spirit land, each looking for a suitable place to rest. The injured wolves silently licked their wounds. The alpha wolf led a group of wolves straight to Lu Yi. At its signal, the wolves stepped forward and spat out the beast cores in their mouth. Lu Yi had already obtained a dozen beast cores from the wolf pack. This time, the wolf pack had gone off to do something. Not only had they grown stronger, but they had also brought back close to 50 beast cores. This was obviously a gift from the wolf pack, and also a reward for Lu Ye's help in tattooing the wolf pack. Very profitable. The materials that Lu Yi had bought from the Tianji treasury were only worth a little more than 1,000 merit points. However, the value of these beast cores was far more than 1,000. If they were sold to the Tianji treasury, they would be worth 10,000 merit points. Wolf packs knew how to be grateful, so Lu Yi naturally wouldn't be stingy. She immediately spent some merit points to buy a batch of healing pills from the Tianji treasury. She then split up with Yi and gave them to the wounded Yao wolves. In any case, the safety of the spiritual land would depend on the wolf pack in the future. The reason why Lu Yi chose the spiritual land in Huitian Valley was to borrow the strength of the wolf pack. If it weren't for this wolf pack, he wouldn't have placed the spiritual land here no matter what. Although this place was hidden, it was also very risky. If some powerful monster beast attacked, Hianli Bashian alone might not be able to stop it. Many of the new demon wolves were a little resistant to coming into contact with Lu Yi, but under the deterrence of the alpha wolf, they could only obediently take the healing pills. The vitality of demonic beasts was very tenacious. As long as their injuries were not too serious and they did not die on the spot, their lives would not be in danger. After 2 or 3 days, the wolf pack had basically recovered. The alpha wolf led the new members of her clan to find Lu Yi and asked him to help inscribe their spirit crests. Lu Yi naturally did not refuse. Increasing the strength of the wolf pack was equivalent to increasing the protective power of the spirit land. At the same time, 30 kilometers away from Huitian Valley, in a cave, Tan Sheng and the other 2 were sitting on the ground, meditating. Even if the 3 of them were all 9th Order Masters, they still looked a little embarrassed at the moment. These days, they had been searching for Lu Yi nearby, but unfortunately, the effect of the compass in their hands was far inferior to the tracking plate, so they could only roughly determine Lu Yi's position. As such, from time to time, they would disturb some powerful monster beasts and inevitably engage in fierce battles. Just an hour ago, the 3 of them had joined forces to kill a monster beast comparable to a Cloud River Realm 9th Order Master. Although they had some gains, their main goal was Lu Yi. If they couldn't find Lu Yi, no matter how many monster beasts they killed, it would be useless. Lu Yi should be nearby. We'll rest for tonight and continue our search in the southeast direction tomorrow, Tan Xing said. Wei Kei and Xiaoliang had no objections. Although they hadn't found Lu Ye's whereabouts yet, according to the clues they had at the moment, Lu Yi had never left this area, so as long as they continued their search, they would eventually find him. We've already searched this 100-kilometer radius several times but haven't found anything. Lu Yi is proficient in the spirit array Dao, so if he really placed the spirit land here, he would definitely have arranged a number of spirit arrays. Tomorrow we'll search for any suspicious spots, Wei Ke added. That's how it should be. Tan Xing nodded, but the transmission array arranged by that bastard is still a problem. If he had arranged it in advance, even if we found him, we might not have been able to kill him. In the hunting ground, Tan Xing had been tracking Lu Ye's whereabouts with the help of the tracking plate, but Lu Ye's movements were unpredictable, sometimes in front and sometimes behind, teleporting 200 or 300 kilometers in the blink of an eye. At that time, he still didn't know what was going on, and even suspected that there was something wrong with the tracking plate. When the hunting ground closed, he calmed down and thought, and asked a few more people. Finally, he came to a conjecture. Lu Yi was most likely able to arrange a transmission array. That was why he could teleport 200 or 300 kilometers in an instant, and he couldn't catch up. When he came to this conclusion, he was really surprised because a transmission array wasn't something that an ordinary formation cultivator could arrange. Even a formation cultivator at the true lake tier would find it difficult to arrange a transmission array, let alone Lu Yi, who was only at the Cloud River tier. But apart from a transmission array, there was no other explanation for the strange situation he had encountered at that time. Later, he met with Wei Ke and Xiaoliang, and after they discussed this matter, he became more and more certain of this conjecture. That was because Wei Ke had chased after Lu Yi before. Lu Yi had clearly entered a cave, but when he entered the cave to search for him, Lu Yi had disappeared. There were only traces left behind by the explosion of the spell formation, as if it had destroyed something. Later, the three of them entered the hunting ground and carefully investigated the places where Lu Yi had appeared. Finally, they found a transmission array left behind by Lu Yi, and confirmed their conjecture about the transmission array. Xiaoliang said, "I've asked the elders in the sect, and they said that we don't have to worry too much about the transmission array. Even if Lu Yi could arrange it, with his cultivation, the range of the transmission array wouldn't be too large. Moreover, the transmission array would have to be connected to each other from a distance to be effective. Demonic beasts are abundant in the Taimang Mountains, so he definitely wouldn't dare to casually arrange a transmission array outside, lest it be destroyed by passing demonic beasts. Rather than worrying about the transmission array, I'm more worried about whether he would invite the Tianji pillar from the spiritual land." Tan Xing and Wei Ke fell silent when they heard this. It might be impossible for others to invite the Tianji pillar, as the cost would be too great, but it couldn't be more normal for Lu Yi. That guy was so rich. Some time ago, he had just received 20 to 30 million merit points from the Myriad Devil Ridge. He definitely had a lot of merit points, and could invite the Tianji pillar at any time. Previously, in the hunting ground, he had used this method to escape with his life. Last time, he had the protection of the golden body token, so no one could stop him. If he didn't have the golden body token, he wouldn't have been able to escape last time, so it shouldn't be a big problem. Tan Xing spoke, and no one knew if he was comforting himself, but he paused and said, "Even if he invited the Tianji pillar in advance and ran away when he saw that the situation was not good, we could at least snatch his spiritual land, and it wouldn't be a total loss. Anyway, no matter what, let's find his traces first. Even if he really invited the Tianji pillar, if we can't kill him this time, there will be a next time." The three of them didn't say anything more and each quietly recovered. When dawn came, they set off again and searched in the southeast direction. A moment later, 3 streams of light flashed across the sky above Huitian Valley. It was Tan Xing and the other two's figures. The 3 pairs of eyes looked left and right, but because of the concealment array in the eyes of the 3, it was just a beautiful valley with nothing special. Of course, the main reason was that the 3 of them didn't know anything about arrays, otherwise they would have seen some clues. Just as the three of them were about to rush over, Xiao Yang suddenly stopped and looked down with rapt attention. In the originally empty valley below, a wolf-like demonic beast had appeared out of nowhere. Looking at its appearance, it was a wolf cub that hadn't grown up yet. Sensing Xiao Yang's abnormality, Tan Xing and Wei Ke hurriedly stopped. "Brother Xia." Tan Xing looked at him suspiciously. Xiao Yang didn't say anything, and continued to look with his eyes. Right at this moment, the space nearby the wolf cub warped, and a layer of ripples that were visible to the naked eye arose. Subsequently, a robust demon wolf appeared out of thin air, and it walked over to the wolf cub's side before biting its neck. It disregarded the wolf cub's resistance and carried it back with its mouth. The ripples appeared again, and the demonic wolf's figure disappeared into thin air. "The concealment array," Tan Xing whispered, and his eyes were filled with surprise. Xiao Yang and Wei Ke were also excited. Wei Ke said, "There's a concealment array here, and it must be Lu Ye's doing. He placed the spiritual land here." This was really a case of wearing out iron shoes in a fruitless search, and then finding it without any effort. They had been looking for traces of Lu Ye nearby, but they had never found him. Who would have thought that today they would coincidentally find traces of the spirit array? Lu Ye also didn't expect that the spirit array he had arranged would be exposed by a playful wolf cub, mainly because he didn't know that Tan Xing and the others had been searching for him. Previously, when he was being tracked by the tracking disc, they were close enough that he could still sense them, but now, he couldn't sense them at all. The severely weakened version of the tracking disc was far inferior to the real one, but because of this, Lu Ye couldn't sense it. It could only be said that there were pros and cons. After confirming that this might be Lu Ye's hiding place, the three of them no longer hesitated. Xiao Yang summoned his saber, Wei Ke activated his secret art, and Tan Xing summoned his own spirit artifact. The three Cloud River Realm Ninth Order Masters attacked at the same time, blasting towards the valley below. Violent secret arts surged, and huge saber waves swept out. Tan Xing's angry roar resounded through the sky. "Lu Ye, get out here and die!" Accompanied by his roar, a rumbling sound rang out. Outside the spiritual land, a solid light curtain suddenly appeared, blocking the incoming attacks, and layers of ripples appeared. To be continued. Chapter 565. Before the formation was activated, they couldn't see much, but now that the three of them had activated the defensive formation, the situation in the valley below was exposed. A huge defensive formation covered half of the valley like an inverted bowl. The spirit energy flowing on the light curtain was condensed and didn't dissipate, showing the density of the world's spirit energy. If Tan Xing and the others had only suspected that this might be Lu Ye's hiding place, then after seeing this defensive formation, their certainty increased by at least 70 to 80%. The strength of a defensive formation was directly related to the world's spirit energy. The denser the world's spirit energy, the stronger the defensive formation. The formation in front of them was so vast, but it still had such astonishing strength, indicating that the world's spirit energy here was definitely at the level of a grade A spirit land. The reward for the first place on the hunting list was a grade A spring spirit. However, because of the other formations, the three of them could only see the light curtain of the defensive formation, but couldn't see the scene inside. If they could see clearly, the three of them wouldn't be so aggressive. Because of this, more than 200 alarmed wolves in the spirit land all looked up at the three in the air. Some of them even lowered their bodies slightly and growled threateningly. The wolves weren't the only ones alarmed by the great momentum. Li Baxian, Feng Yuechan, and Giant Armor flashed out of their wooden houses and looked up. Glancing at the three figures in the air, Li Baxian was slightly surprised. Why are they here? Li Baxian naturally knew these three people. Tan Xing and Xiao Liang were both on the spirit stream list and had more or less interacted with Li Baxian and Feng Yuechan. Last time, he fought with them in the hunting ground, and in the end, He relied on the trap formation set up by Lu Yi in advance to escape. These 3 people appeared in the sky above the spirit land and attacked the formation. It was obvious that they didn't come with good intentions. Listening to their shouts, it seemed that they were specifically looking for their junior brother. Where's junior brother? Li Baxuan didn't see Lu Ye's figure, but he ran out. He said, Lu Yi is honing his blade technique in the Mirage realm. At this time, Li Baxuan was quite helpless. Lu Yi could enter the Mirage realm with the help of breath fruit cores. This was something he knew. Recently, he and Feng Yuechan had occasionally used breath fruit cores to enter the Mirage realm to hone their fighting skills. As such, he knew that if Lu Yi was inside the Mirage realm, he wouldn't be able to perceive the situation outside, so he could only wait until he exited it. But if things continued like this, the spirit array would definitely collapse. Without anyone controlling it, the power it could display was limited, and with Tan Xing's group of 3 Ninth Order Cloud River Realm cultivators attacking together, it wouldn't be long before they could break the spirit array. Where's the jade pendant? Leet asked. I'll go find it, Est leave. But the jades, ESTSSSTS. Li Baxuan took it, poured his spiritual energy into it, and after familiarizing himself with it, began to mobilize the surrounding world energy to control the spirit array. In this situation, Li Baxuan wasn't worried about Tan Xing's group coming in. Although they weren't Tan Xing's group's opponents, there were more than 300 monster wolves in the spirit land. If Tan Xing's group really came in, they wouldn't have a good ending. However, before Lu Yi exited the Mirage realm, Yang Kai couldn't let Tan Xing's group enter the spirit land. Otherwise, if a chaotic battle broke out, Lu Yi would be injured. So, the best way now was to stall for time and wait for Lu Yi to exit the Mirage realm. As soon as Yang Kai took control of the spirit array, Tan Xing and the others immediately noticed. As a result, the power of the 3's attacks became more and more fierce. Tan Xing even shouted, Lu Yi, give up. Unless you can summon the Heaven's Fate Pillar again, this place will be your burial ground. As he spoke, he attacked wildly, causing ripples to appear on the spirit array's light curtain. There was no response from the spirit array, but the more it was like this, the more certain Tan Xing and the others were that Lu Yi was inside. If it were someone else, they would have just stood up and explained the situation, but because Lu Yi was inside the spirit array, he didn't dare to show himself easily. Moreover, they had tracked Lu Ye's whereabouts to this point, and it just so happened that there was a Grade A spirit land and a spirit array of such scale here. How could there be such a coincidence in this world? Spiritual energy surged violently, and the light screen flickered incessantly. Tan Xing and the other 2 were secretly shocked. This protective array was truly powerful. Even with the 3 of them joining forces, they were still unable to break it. However, even if they didn't break the spirit array, it was still quite effective because the light curtain of the spirit array was obviously dimmer than before. At this rate, they would be able to break the spirit array sooner or later. At that time, they could directly attack the root of the problem. Attack together! Xiao Yang roared as he drew his saber. Who knew if Lu Yi would summon the Heaven's Fate Pillar, so the sooner they broke the spirit array, the better. As his long saber fell, Wei Kei's spell followed closely behind. Tan Xing attacked as well, and one attack after another landed on the same spot of the formation. The 3 of them worked together, and their coordination was flawless. The light screen of the formation that was attacked flickered repeatedly. Inside the spirit land, the helpless look on Li Baxuan's face grew stronger. Although he tried his best to maintain the operation of the spirit array, he wasn't a spirit array cultivator after all, and the spirit array didn't come from him, so there was a limit to what he could do. At most, he could mobilize more energy to maintain the spirit array's position. Thinking about it, he decided that he could only let these 3 reckless fellows in and let the monster wolf deal with them. Just as he was thinking this, Lu Ye's voice suddenly sounded in his ear. What's going on? Li Baxuan turned his head and saw Lu Yi standing beside him, looking up at the sky and exclaiming, "Little junior brother, you're finally awake." Lu Yi also saw Tan Xing's group of 3 baring their fangs and brandishing their claws at this moment and couldn't help showing a strange expression. How did these 3 find me? Moreover, the 3 of them actually found me together. His first thought was that the secret technique of the tracing plate was still in effect? But thinking about it carefully, it didn't make sense. Since he left the hunting ground and returned to the 9 regions, there were no traces of the secret technique planted on his body, so it didn't make sense for it to still be in effect after such a long time. But these 3 couldn't have found this place for no reason. Although he didn't know what method they used, it was obvious that they used a special spirit tool similar to the tracing plate. The enemy had found him and was attacking the spirit array he had set up, so this battle was naturally unavoidable. Lu Yi turned his head and saw that all the wolves were looking up at the sky. Many of the monster wolves had already been provoked and were baring their teeth on the spot. As if sensing Lu Ye's gaze, the head wolf somewhere in the wolf pack turned its head and looked at Lu Yi. The head wolf nodded slightly. Lu Yi made up his mind. He had trained his soldiers for 1,000 days to use them in a single moment. It was undoubtedly a wise decision to use the demon wolves as the strongest defensive force in the spiritual land. Although the wolf pack had initially stayed here because of the giant armor, Lu Yi and the wolf pack had become extremely harmonious over the past few days. Now that the enemy had come knocking on their door, the wolf pack would definitely not sit idly by. Taking the jade pendant of the spirit array from Li Baxian, Lu Yi poured his spiritual power into it and adjusted the power of the spirit array. He said, "Fourth senior brother, take senior sister Feng and giant armor to this position and wait." Saying so, he threw out a spirit array flag and it flew into the distance. The spirit array he had set up in the spiritual land was not just a defensive and concealment spirit array. The defensive power of the spiritual land itself was definitely not limited to the wolf pack. The power of the wolf pack could be borrowed, but he had never completely relied on it. Li Baxian nodded and immediately led Feng Yuechan and giant armor in the direction of the spirit array flag. After a short while, following Lu Ye's actions, the 3 of them concealed themselves. Yi went underground and waited for an opportunity to move, while Hu Pa jumped on Lu Ye's shoulder and waited. Lu Yi moved his spiritual power and the spirit array changed. At the same time, a light crack came from the sky, like a mirror being shattered. A gap was broken in the tight spirit array. The 3 figures entered in a line, accompanied by Tan Xing's carefree laughter. "Lu Ye, your time of death has come." His laughter came to an abrupt stop as if someone had grabbed him by the neck. The smile on Tan Xing's face suddenly stiffened. Beside him, Wei Kei and Xiaoliang were shocked. The 3 pairs of eyes stared at the 200 or so monster wolves below, their expressions gradually turning serious. Although they had seen traces of monster beasts entering and exiting this place before, and it was because of that scene that they were certain there was a spirit array covering this place, none of them had expected so many monster beasts to have gathered in this valley. Looking at the scale, it was a wolf pack. Lu Ye, whom they had yearned for day and night, was standing below, coexisting peacefully with the wolf pack. The monster wolves looked at them with eyes full of savagery. What was going on? Tan Xing and the other 2 were dumbfounded by the scene before them. They had thought that the biggest problem they would face after breaking through the defensive array would be Lu Yi escaping with the help of a teleportation array or using the Pillar of Heaven's fate to escape. But now, it seemed that the development of the situation was completely different from what they had expected. Lu Ye showed no signs of escaping, but the 3 of them had accidentally fallen into a trap. What kind of spirit array was this? This was simply a wolf's den. How could Lu Ye have such great ability to subdue such a wolf pack? Retreat! Xiaoliang was the first to react, immediately urging his body to retreat through the gap they had come in from. However, as Lu Yi waved the array flag in his hand, the protective array began to twist and change. In the blink of an eye, it had been replaced by a giant trapping array. The original opening had also disappeared without a trace. Xiao Yang slammed into the light curtain of the trapping array, unable to escape unless he had the ability to break the trapping array again. Lu Ye had the protection of such a pack of wolves, so he had nothing to fear. The reason why he didn't let them in immediately was to numb them. This was a well-prepared trap. Realizing this, Tan Xing and the other two's expressions turned ugly. Wei Kei suddenly spoke up, "Don't panic, the two of you. These monster wolves don't seem to have the ability to fly. As long as we don't fall, they can't do anything to us,